Chapter 26-21. I heard your name is Lung Ruoxue? 3. Old Grandmadam. Lung Yichun was dumbfounded. Never in his dreams would he have thought that the old ancestor would actually help an outsider. Is this how you guard the city gate? The Lung family dares to refuse to enter the city? Lung Xiaoqing's eyes were filled with rage as he roared at Lung Yi. The Lung family? Who was it? I've never refused the Lung family's entry into the city. Lung Yichun said with an aggrieved expression. Sob. How would he dare to reject the Lung family from entering the city? Wasn't this courting death? Especially at such a sensitive time, if the Lung family really filed a complaint against him, his good days in the Lung family would be over. Towards this, Lung Yichun had thought it through quite clearly. He knew that it was okay for him to bully outsiders. At least, outsiders could not complain to the old ancestor. However, he could not bully his own family as he pleased. Otherwise, it would not be good for him to offend his own family. Girl, you never said you were a member of the Lung family? Looking at the aggrieved Lung Yichun, Lung Xiaoqing believed that he wouldn't dare to lie. This matter could be a misunderstanding. In his opinion, it was fine as long as this matter was not intentional. Hence, he turned to Lung Ruoxue. You didn't say that you're from the Lung family, so you're going to be refused to enter the city because of the large number of people? Although I didn't say who I was, my subordinates said that they were from the Luo family, so they were also refused to enter the city. Lung Ruoxue said nonchalantly. Yes. I told you that we are from the Luo family, but this young Master Kun doesn't believe me. He even looks like he doesn't like our Luo family at all, as if he looks down on us. I wonder if the Lung family wants to end their alliance now. The grand elder of the Luo family continued Lung Ruoxue's sentence. Lung Yichun. Lung Xiaoqing's face darkened when he heard this. However, Lung Yichun still tried to defend himself and quickly said, Ancestor, it's a critical time now. They said they were from the Luo family, but they didn't show any solid evidence. How can I believe them? You said that you wouldn't believe that we're from the Luo family, so what does it matter if we can't produce any evidence? In short, even after we said that we are from the Luo family, your Lung family still chose to refuse our alliance. May I ask the ancestor of the Lung family, does the Lung family want to end our alliance with the Luo family? After the grand elder of the Luo family heard Lung Yichun's explanation, he asked again. Grand elder Luo, this is all a misunderstanding. I apologize to the Luo family on behalf of the Lung family. Please be magnanimous and don't lower yourself to the same level as this stupid pig. Lung Xiaoqing replied with a sincere tone. Seeing that the Lung family's ancestor, who was the most senior in the family, had apologized to him in a humble manner, the grand elder of the Luo family also knew when to stop. After all, the Lung family and his master still had a blood relationship, so he did not want to make things difficult for the Lung family. The matter of Lung Ruoxue's refusal to enter the city was temporarily forgotten under the Lung clan's intentional fawning. After being personally welcomed into the Lung family's main residence by Lung Xiaoqing, Lung Ruoxue and the rest moved into the falling snow garden that they had once stayed in. Lung Xiaoqing, who was familiar with Lung Ruoxue's personality, similarly did not arrange for anyone to serve them. Lung Ruoxue did not mind this, but even if she did not mind, it did not mean that no one would come to cause trouble. The person who was looking for trouble was Lung Yichun, who had just been severely scolded by the Lung family's old ancestor. Although Lung Yichun was scolded, he did not receive any other punishment. Hence, the self-righteous him thought that the other party's position in old grandmadam's heart was not as high as his. Hence, he naturally came over to show off. In addition, he knew that Lung Ruoxue was his junior, so the fear he had towards Lung Ruoxue and the rest naturally disappeared. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the mother parasol tree were sitting in the garden. The mother parasol tree felt that Lung Jian's scenery was really not bad, and was pulling Lung Ruoxue along to admire it with her. When she saw Lung Yichun who suddenly appeared in front of them, the mother parasol tree raised her brows and asked indifferently, Is there something? Lung Ruoxue did not even look at Lung Yichun. Looking at the mother parasol tree, Lung Yichun's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. He was slightly regretful that he did not notice the existence of this great beauty at the city gate earlier. As for Lung Ruoxue, even though she was also beautiful, she had obviously angered him. Hence, he was not interested in her. At this moment, he was here to make Lung Ruoxue feel uncomfortable. Hence, he could only give the mother parasol tree the cold shoulder for now. Then he turned to look at Lung Ruoxue and said arrogantly, "I heard you're Lung Ruoxue?" "Yes, I am." Lung Ruoxue nodded. "How audacious! Why don't you kneel when you see your elders?" Suddenly, Lung Yichun let out a loud roar. His voice was so loud that it even startled a group of beautiful ornamental birds in the garden. Hearing this, Lung Ruoxue blinked her eyes and asked the mother parasol tree on purpose, "Senior, are there any elders here?" "I don't know. Who knows how the Lung family's seniority is ranked?" The mother parasol tree held back her laughter and said in agreement. At the same time, she mourned for this Lung Yichun in front of her for 3 minutes. This was really a case of forcing one's way into hell when there was no door to heaven. From what she knew, Lung Ruoxue was very famous in the Lung clan, and was known as the god of slaughter. Hence she could not understand. Could it be that this fellow in front of her had never heard of Lung Ruoxue's fearsome reputation? He had already annoyed the little girl before, and now he still dared to come and find trouble with her. How bold was this person? Thanks actually, it wasn't that Lung Yichun had not heard of Lung Ruoxue's great name. It was just that when Lung Ruoxue was displaying her divine might in the Lung family, Lung Yichun happened to not be at home. Hence, even though he knew of her existence, he had not personally experienced those things. Hence, he still felt that the Lung Ruoxue's reputation was definitely not as good as the rumors. Moreover, even though he had offended Lung Ruoxue at the city gate, the old grand madam did not do anything to him. From this, it could be seen that Lung Ruoxue's status in the Lung family was not that high. With this thought in mind, he was even more fearless. Therefore, he who didn't learn his lesson had just been taught a lesson, and now he was looking for a beating again. "I'm your elder." Lung Yichun was listening to the conversation between Lung Ruoxue and the mother parasol tree. Seeing that the two of them had obviously ignored him, he reminded them angrily and brought the mother parasol tree along. "My surname isn't Lung," the mother parasol tree said with a smile. "May I ask which sect are you from?" Lung Ruoxue asked curiously. "I'm Woody's uncle, so you guys have to call me uncle too." The moment he heard this, Lung Yichun immediately put on the airs of an elder, and raised his head to look at Lung Ruoxue in a show of force. "Uncle? Are you dreaming? Even if you want to acknowledge your family, you don't have to do this." The mother parasol tree laughed evilly. After she finished speaking, she immediately lifted Lung Yichun up as though she was lifting a little chick. Lung Yichun was so frightened that he immediately cried out, "What are you doing? Quickly put me down. Why were women so rough these days?" Lung Yichun was incomparably indignant. Being lifted up like this was a complete disgrace to his manliness. Hence, he was instantly enraged. However, the mother parasol tree did not give him the chance to show off his might. With a gentle wave of her arm, Lung Yichun immediately turned into a shooting star and was thrown out. When they heard the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground in the distance, the two of them calmly continued to drink tea, chat, and enjoy the scenery. "Ha! Little sister, long time no see." At this moment, Lung Shuang's forthright laughter rang in Lung Ruoxue and the mother parasol tree's ears. The two of them looked up and saw Lung Shuang and Lung Wudi walking in from outside. "Sister, have you seen enough?" Lung Ruoxue glanced at the mother and son, who seemed to be eager to see the world in chaos, and smiled. "Hee hee. Sister, don't be angry. We didn't show up because we wanted to give you guys a chance to act freely. Otherwise, if we just watched him being bullied by you guys and didn't do anything, he would definitely complain to us." Lung Shuang said helplessly. "We haven't seen each other for a few years. Why has elder sister's courage become smaller instead?" Lung Ruoxue raised her brows as if she couldn't believe it. "AI. It's hard to explain in a few words. Ever since Lung Yichun returned, we've all been living in an abyss of suffering." Lung Shuang complained. Was that guy Lung Yimin's younger brother? Your uncle?" Lung Ruoxue asked Lung Wudi after a moment of curiosity. "It's a clan brother with a very distant relationship." The mother and son looked at each other and sighed. "Then why are you so afraid of him?" Lung Ruoxue could tell that the mother and son in front of her were helpless towards Lung Yichun, and became even more curious. He has caught the old ancestor's eye and has been very favored in recent years. Leng Shuang explained. No wonder. He didn't even receive any punishment for provoking me. Leng Ruoxue said as she came to a sudden realization. It seemed that in this day and age, people with backing were indeed not easy to deal with. However, she didn't care if Leng Xiaoqing would punish Leng Yichun because of the previous incident. Anyway, as long as that fellow was blind enough to find trouble with her, then he couldn't blame her for not giving the Leng family face. That's good too. We don't have to be bored. The mother parasol tree replied nonchalantly after hearing Leng Ruoxue's words. This is. Leng Shuang finally had the opportunity to ask about the identity of the parasol tree mother tree. A senior I met in the divine realm. Leng Ruoxue explained simply. She did not want to reveal too much about the identity of the parasol tree mother tree. Leng Shuang and Leng Wudi immediately bowed to the mother tree. Senior, this junior has been impolite. You're welcome. The mother parasol tree smiled gently. She had a good impression of the mother and son. Seeing that they had a good relationship with Shui, she was naturally willing to give them some face. After the four of them had gotten to know each other, Leng Shuang enthusiastically did her part as the host, and ordered people to serve quite a lot of good wine and food. They chatted and laughed, and only then did Leng Shuang ask about the purpose of Leng Ruoxue's trip. Chapter 26-22. Are you sick? 1. Seeing that Leng Shuang had finally asked the main question, Leng Ruoxue smiled faintly and said, I came to the Haotian continent for a tour and found out that it doesn't seem to be very peaceful. How is the Leng family doing? Leng Ruoxue's question was obviously a deliberate attempt to see how Leng Shuang would answer. When Leng Shuang heard this, she was suddenly in a dilemma. She thought that Sister Shui was blaming the Leng family for not lending a helping hand to the Luo family, and had come to question them. So for a moment she did not know how to answer. Say that the Leng clan's situation is not good? However, the Leng family was still living peacefully in the city. How could they say that the Leng family was doing well? Since he was not bad, why did he turn a blind eye to the Luo family's misfortune? Leng Shuang thought about it for a moment, and felt that no matter what she said, it might annoy little sister Shui. Thinking of this, she didn't dare to speak. Seeing that his mother was in a difficult position, Leng Wudi had to take over the difficult task. He sighed and said, I'm sure you've seen the current situation of the entire Haotian continent. At present, the members of the Leng family are all staying in the proud cold city, and we rarely walk on the continent. Leng Wudi's words were flawless. He did not reveal the Leng family's current situation, nor did he complain too much to Leng Ruoxue. He also fulfilled the old ancestor's request of not telling Leng Ruoxue the entire situation. He thought that Leng Ruoxue would be understanding and let this matter pass, but who knew that Leng Ruoxue was not satisfied with his answer? She laughed coldly and said, Leng Wudi is indeed the young master of the Leng family. Your answer is so formal. However, since you've said so, I'll believe you. I was going to help you if you were in trouble, but it seems unnecessary now. I'm sure your Leng clan will be able to handle the situation. After listening to Leng Ruoxue's words, the mother and son looked at each other with bitter smiles. They knew that they had still angered this little girl who loved to hold grudges. Now this little girl was truly angry. It was all their fault for being so full of themselves. Both mother and son were extremely regretful and tried to appease Leng Ruoxue's anger, who knew that the other party would not give them a chance to speak at all. Leng Ruoxue even went straight to the point. Sister, you've changed. We've grown distant. When she said this, Leng Ruoxue's beautiful face was filled with disappointment. When Leng Shuang heard this, she felt extremely upset. How could she have wanted this? However, she could not disobey the words of her old grandmadam. Just as Leng Shuang was filled with regret, Leng Ruoxue, who had finished speaking, had already turned around and returned to her room. The parasol tree mother sighed and said, You two can go back first. We also need to rest. Looking at the blazing sun hanging high in the sky, the mother and son were quite helpless. This was really a good excuse to send off their guests. The sun hadn't even set yet, but they were already going to rest. They were quite helpless about this. Sighing, Leng Shuang and Leng Wudi left the snow garden gloomily. After watching the mother and son leave, the parasol tree mother tree walked into the room and glanced at Lung Ruoxue, who was sitting on the chair and playing with the golden eagle. She smiled and said, "Shuer, are you really angry?" "No, I didn't have much hope for the Lung family, so why would I be angry?" Lung Ruoxue said nonchalantly. But the mother and son just now took it seriously. The mother parasol tree said helplessly, "Yes, I know. In the Lung family, this mother and son are the only ones I like, but they don't dare to tell me the truth for the sake of the Lung family. Although it was their own choice, and they have no obligation to tell me anything about the Lung family, I am still a little disappointed in them. Besides, I think I have shown my sincerity by coming to the proud cold city. For the sake of our ancestor, I can't just sit by and do nothing about the Lung family's difficulties. But now it seems that I was thinking too much. They even thought that I was here to cause trouble." Lung Ruoxue said helplessly. In fact, she could still understand Lung Shuang and her son's thoughts of standing on the family's side. After all, the present was not like the past. Now the Lung family needed to be united. However, understanding did not mean approval. Perhaps the Lung family valued their face very much, but she really did not think that the Lung family's face was worth much. After hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, the mother parasol tree could not help but laugh. "Shuer, you really don't think you're here to cause trouble?" "Thanks, of course not," Lung Ruoxue replied matter-of-factly, and as she spoke, she playfully snatched the fruit that the golden eagle was holding tightly in its arms. The two of them began a tug-of-war. The golden hawk turned to Lung Ruoxue and said angrily, "Scoundrel! Scoundrel! You're so bad. How could you snatch my fruit? If I'm not mistaken, I'm the one who gave you this fruit," Lung Ruoxue said with a half-smile. "Since you've given it to me, it's mine. How can you take it back?" The golden hawk said angrily and looked at the mother tree for help. The mother parasol tree looked at the two fellows in front of it and was really speechless. She sighed and ignored the golden hawk's plea for help. She turned to Lung Ruoxue and said, "Girl, you just arrived and you already smashed their city walls. You can't blame me for that." Lung Ruoxue did not feel guilty at all, and continued to play with the golden eagle. Sighing heavily again, the mother parasol tree gave up on preaching to Lung Ruoxue, and turned around to sit at the side to watch the show. Meanwhile, Lung Ruoxue and the golden eagle were even more excited. At the same time, Lung Shuang and Lung Wudi, who had just returned from Lung Ruoxue's place, were invited over by Lung Xiaoqing. She stood uneasily in the old ancestor's study room. Both mother and son did not say a word, and the atmosphere in the study room was so heavy that it was hard to breathe. After a long time, Lung Xiaoqing looked deeply at Lung Shuang and Lung Wudi before he slowly said, "What did that girl say? Old ancestor, what do you mean?" Lung Shuang raised her head and looked at Lung Xiaoqing with a confused expression. She wanted to play dumb, but she did not know if she could fool him. "What's that girl going to do this time?" Lung Xiaoqing asked through gritted teeth. "He said he was here for a tour in the Haotian continent." Lung Shuang said honestly. "What else?" Lung Xiaoqing asked again. "No more." Lung Shuang blinked her eyes and said with an innocent face, "No more? Aren't you two good sisters? Didn't she say anything else to you?" It was clear that Lung Xiaoqing did not believe Lung Shuang's words. From what he could remember, that girl would never be so cold to anyone who caught her eye. "No, she has already turned against me," Lung Shuang said honestly. Actually, she really did not want to accept the Grand Madame's mission to test Lung Ruoxue. Now the test was not successful, and their sisterhood was over. "What? Why did she fall out with you? Is she really that heartless?" Lung Xiaoqing's expression turned ugly when he heard this. Chapter 26-23. Are you sick? 2. It's not that she's heartless, it's just that she thinks we're too distant. Lung Shuang said indifferently. How could this be? Didn't you treat them well? As far as he knew, Lung Shuang and her son had moved the best ingredients of the Lung family to the falling snow garden. If this was considered as being estranged with her, then what was considered as not being estranged? That hateful girl was really hard to serve. This news gave him a headache. "We did treat her well, but she thinks we're not sincere," Lung Shuang said helplessly. "Great ancestor, You didn't want us to reveal the current situation of the Lung family, so we didn't dare to say anything. We only said that the members of the Lung family are all staying in the proud cold city and rarely walk around the Hautian continent. She thought that answer was too official, so she was annoyed. Lung Wudi added after receiving a look from his mother. What's there to be annoyed about? Could it be that she really wanted to hear that our Lung family's status had fallen by 1,000 feet and was not as good as before? We have to rely on her help to restore the Lung family's prestige? Lung Xiaoqing roared, his face ashen from anger. Faced with the old grandmadam's questioning, Lung Shuang and her son did not know how to respond. If they could, they really wanted to say, yes. To be honest, there was nothing to be embarrassed about. The Lung family really needed Lung Ruoxia's help now. Unfortunately, on the one hand, the great ancestor was concerned about the Lung family's face, and on the other hand, he wanted Lung Ruoxia to take the initiative to do something for the Lung family. This way, the Lung family would not be too embarrassed. But was this possible? They were all very clear about Lung Ruoxia's temper. If you want her to help you, you must first show your sincerity, right? However, the old ancestor was very conflicted about this. He wanted to save his face so much that he had to suffer. Now, such a powerful helper not only did not intend to help, but also wanted to watch the fun and not care about the matter. It could be imagined how depressed the Lung family would be. And now, the first person to be depressed was naturally the Lung clan's greatest elder. According to Lung Xiaoqing's thoughts, Lung Ruoxia should have heard that Sun Tao had found a group of experts from God knows where and caused chaos in the Hautian continent. Many clans and powers were affected, and the Luo clan was the one who suffered the most. As the master of the Luo family, since Lung Ruoxia had returned to the Hautian continent, it was natural for her to stand up for the Luo family. And while she stood up for them, she could also cooperate with them. Wouldn't that be a happy ending for everyone? This way, the Lung family would have Lung Ruoxia, a powerful ally, and they would not need to seek help from Lung Ruoxia, who had never treated them as part of the Lung family. They could also get rid of Sun Tao and the others. What a perfect ending this would be. It had to be said that Lung Xiaoqing's idea was pretty good. This was because in his heart, whoever spoke first at this moment would mean that the other party was weaker. In a relationship with a strong person, the weaker party would naturally have a lower right to speak. This was definitely something that Lung Xiaoqing, the head of the Lung clan, would not want to see. From what he knew, even though Lung Ruoxia didn't acknowledge the Lung family, in terms of bloodline, she was still a member of the Lung family. This was something that no one could deny. Since she was a member of the Lung family, he wouldn't pursue her unfilial behavior of not acknowledging the main family. At this time, shouldn't she properly display her responsibility as a junior? It was precisely because of these thoughts that he hoped Lung Ruoxia would help him, but at the same time he didn't want to cast aside his status as an elder and lower his pride to beg a junior. Unfortunately, he had forgotten that Lung Ruoxia had no sense of belonging to the Lung family, and had never admitted that she was a member of the Lung family on Hautian continent. It would be impossible for her to take the initiative to show concern for the Lung family's current situation. Thanks, as long as Lung Ruoxia was conscious, such a thing would never happen. Although she would give her ancestor face and come to the Lung family to take a look, it was absolutely impossible for her to take the initiative to help the Lung family. And now, the Lung family seemed to not need her help, so she was very happy. In this way, he could go back and explain to his cheap ancestor. After all, he didn't need him to meddle. And he couldn't just force himself to move forward, right? She couldn't do such a thing. Right now, Lung Ruoxia's attitude towards the Lung clan on the Hautian continent was neither to take the initiative nor to reject them. The members of the Lung clan on the Hautian continent, especially those from Lung Xiaoqing's lineage, who were led by him, naturally hoped that Lung Ruoxia would take the initiative to lend a helping hand. But this could only become their beautiful dream. After Lung Xiaoqing found out that Lung Ruoxia had angered Lung Shuang and her son, he was so troubled and depressed that he could not eat for a few days. He had been sighing all day long. Finally, after he sighed countless times, Lung Xiaoxiao, who had been pretending to be invisible, could no longer take it. He pulled up Lung Xiaoqing, who was in a dilemma, and roared, "Big brother, let's go. I'll bring you to that little girl." Why are you looking for her? Leng Xiaoqing looked at Leng Xiaoxiao warily. Go and tell her that the Leng family needs her help now. Leng Xiaoxiao said honestly. You want me to go beg that bad girl? Leng Xiaoqing's face turned black instantly. What else can we do? Do you expect them to take the initiative to come to our door and be ordered around by us? Big brother, wake up. Stop dreaming, all right? That girl isn't someone who can be manipulated by others. Leng Xiaoxiao's words were rather direct. He did not wish for his elder brother to have any hope that she would take the initiative to ask him or send herself to his door. Based on his understanding of Leng Ruoxue, that was simply impossible. Furthermore, based on what he knew, she had been living happily in the falling snow garden for the past few days. She had been living a carefree life. In fact, he was very clear about his eldest brother's thoughts. It was nothing more than the fact that all the younger generations in his family couldn't compare to Leng Ruoxue. It wasn't that they couldn't compare to her in one aspect, but that they couldn't compare to her in all aspects. His intelligence, wealth, and resources were inferior to others, and his abilities were even worse. In front of Leng Ruoxue, even he, the elder ancestor of the Leng family, felt inferior, let alone his eldest brother, who had always been proud and thought that his descendants would live up to expectations. It could be said that Leng Ruoxue's sudden appearance had extinguished all of eldest brother's sense of superiority. Among the three brothers, the eldest brother's descendants were the most abundant and filled with talents, followed by his. The second brother's descendants were the least. There was only one Leng Qianye on the Haotian continent. However, the appearance of Leng Ruoxue and her two grandsons had dulled the brilliance of the Leng family's descendants. They could not even shine a little. This fact was a huge shock to his big brother. Even he was envious, jealous, and hateful. After all, who didn't want such a capable descendant? But they didn't. However, it was fortunate that Leng Ruoxue had the bloodline of the Leng clan. This was something that no one could deny. In front of Leng Ruoxue, the members of the Leng family who knew her true strength were both afraid and loving of her. Especially after they found out that all the members of the Leng family who had a history with her were no longer in this world. Their fear of Leng Ruoxue had risen to an unprecedented level. However, at the same time, they also knew that if the Leng family wanted to regain its glory, they could not do so without Leng Ruoxue. Therefore, most of the clan members showed their goodwill towards Leng Ruoxue's arrival. According to their thinking, it didn't matter whether she took a fancy to them or not. What was important was that they didn't want to offend the goddess of killing. With this thought in mind, unless there was something important, most of the Leng clan members wouldn't disturb Leng Ruoxue. Chapter 26-24. Are you sick? 3. As for those who couldn't open their eyes, they would just turn a blind eye and treat it as sending toys to Leng Ruoxue. Otherwise, it would be quite boring, right? It was precisely because they had such a thought that the entire Leng family turned a blind eye to Leng Yichun's provocative behavior. However, they didn't dare to let that fool Leng Yichun off too easily. Otherwise, if he really angered Leng Ruoxue, she would definitely make a fool of herself. Leng Xiaoxiao's eyes were fixed on his elder brother, who was in a dilemma. In an instant, he had already gone through the situation in his mind. Anyway, he had already thought it through clearly a long time ago. He just did not know when his elder brother would come around. Seeing that Leng Xiaoqing was only frowning and not saying anything, Leng Xiaoxiao could only continue to persuade her. Big brother, I know that you also want to be on good terms with that girl. Otherwise, you wouldn't have taken the initiative to become an ally with the Luo family. So don't be so prideful. Let's go and talk things out with that girl. She won't sit by and do nothing about the Leng family. Who said I want to be on good terms with her? I'm her elder. Shouldn't she be the one to please me? Also, what's wrong with being an ally of the Luo family? That was me giving face to Xiaoyu. I didn't want to lower my head. You have to be clear about this. Leng Xiaoxiao's words finally caused Leng Xiaoqing to have a slight reaction. However, the words that came out of his mouth were filled with the smell of gunpowder. Hearing this, Leng Xiaoxiao could only ignore the smell of gunpowder. He consoled his elder brother and said, "All right. You only became an ally of the Luo family because you wanted to give second brother face. You're Lung Ruoxia's elder, so she has to come and beg you. Is it okay for me to say this? Big brother. Previously at the city gate, didn't you already put down your pride and took the initiative to apologize to the Luo family for Lung Yichun's actions? Why are you quarreling now? Lung Xiaoxiao could not understand. What was Big Brother trying to do by being so willful? Could it be that he was counting on that little lass Lung Ruoxia to coax him? Wasn't this too unrealistic? In fact, he was right. Lung Xiaoqing really thought that way. Even though he had given the Luo family some face at the city gate, this did not mean that he could forgive Lung Ruoxia for ignoring him and him as an elder. Hence, after he had arranged for Lung Ruoxia and the rest to stay in the snow garden, he did not appear because he hoped that Lung Ruoxia would take the initiative to visit him. Who knew that a few days had passed and the little girl was living in the snow garden with good food and drink? She did not have any intention of meeting Lung Xiaoqing at all. It was as if they had forgotten about his existence. As such, the proud and arrogant Lung Xiaoqing was naturally infuriated. However, it was not convenient for him to share his little thoughts with outsiders, so he could only sulk on his own. In Lung Xiaoxiao's eyes, his behavior was naturally seen as a quarrel. Now Lung Xiaoqing, who had obviously reached a certain level of bickering, immediately retorted when she heard Lung Xiaoxiao's words. Who said I was being difficult? Who said that? Am I not that little girl's elder? Shouldn't I be the one to greet the elders? I should. But she's not an ordinary junior. At the very least, I don't dare to treat her as a junior. Big brother, I can't see through Lung Ruoxia's current strength. Lung Xiaoxiao sighed softly. He had finally revealed this cruel truth, hoping that his big brother would be able to recognize the truth as soon as possible. Even though Lung Ruoxia's current strength was only at the level of a mystical king, anyone with a discerning eye would know that she had long gone to the firmament. So it was naturally impossible for her to only be at the level of a mystical king. In the world of cultivators, the strong had always been respected. If Lung Ruoxia did not have a trace of bloodline connection with the Lung family, they would probably have to address her as senior. But now, at least Lung Ruoxia had shown some friendliness, and the two sides were still equal. Since that was the case, Lung Xiaoxiao felt that there was no need for them to worsen the relationship between the two sides for the sake of so-called face. After all, Lung Ruoxia was not the one who needed to rely on them, but they needed her. Lung Xiaoxiao's words made Lung Xiaoqing fall silent once again. That's right. Xiaoxiao was right. Lung Ruoxia's abilities had probably reached a level that they could not imagine. He naturally knew how monstrous that girl's aptitude was. Logically speaking, he should be happy that his family had such a talented descendant, but he just couldn't be happy at all. Throughout Lung Ruoxia's growth, the clan had never given her any help. As such, what right did he have to ask her to contribute to the clan? Just because of that wisp of illusory bloodline? Putting himself in Lung Ruoxia's shoes, he would also feel that this reason was too far-fetched. He also knew that Lung Ruoxia's visit to the Lung family this time was definitely for Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu had a good descendant. At that moment, Lung Xiaoqing was extremely jealous of Lung Xiaoyu. He even felt that he would be willing to exchange such a huge number of descendants for Lung Ruoxia. Unfortunately, that was impossible. Forget it, I've been hoping for too much. That girl has never been an obedient descendant, and has never thought of her as a member of our Lung family. Since that's the case, why should I still consider myself an elder? That would only make that girl loathe us even more. After a moment of silence, Lung Xiaoqing spoke slowly. Thanks. In fact, he had already known that this would be the case, but he had been unwilling to admit it. Now he had no choice but to admit it. Xiaoxiao had already made it so clear, and he could not continue to lie to himself. Big brother, it's good that you can think this way. In reality, it doesn't matter if Lung Ruoxia is willing to admit her relationship with us or not. Her ties with us will never be broken because as long as second brother is around, she can't ignore our Lung family. Second brother isn't someone who doesn't care about brotherhood, so as long as we don't make any excessive requests, Lung Ruoxia will always be our greatest backing. Lung Xiaoxiao analyzed. Do you think that Lung Ruoxia will become our backing? Lung Xiaoqing asked in surprise. He had thought that even though Lung Ruoxia could not be his junior, she would at least be able to interact with him on an equal footing. However, Xiaoxiao's words clearly placed Lung Ruoxia's status above the Lung family's. Was this appropriate? Big brother, don't tell me that you don't feel relieved when you see that little girl? Lung Xiaoxiao asked instead of answering. Lung Xiaoqing pondered for a moment, then nodded gloomily. He could not deny that the moment he saw that detestable little girl, he was indeed rather happy. He even felt as if his savior had arrived. It's precisely because of this that we've unconsciously treated Lung Ruoxia as our salvation. At least with her around, it's as if we have a pillar of support. It's not as if Big Brother isn't aware of what that girl has done back then. Before she was a dark supreme, she had dared to turn the Sun family upside down. Now that she's gone to the firmament for a period of time, I'm afraid her destructive power is even greater than before. Lung Xiaoxiao's face showed a hint of sympathy towards the end of his sentence. Of course, he was not pitying the Lung family, but the unlucky Sun Tao. I agree with what you've said, but isn't it a bit of an exaggeration to say that she's our backer just because of this? Lung Xiaoqing was still reluctant to admit the truth, so he asked with uncertainty. Big brother, let's face reality. Even if Lung Ruoxia can't be our backing now, she will definitely be in the future. You have to trust my intuition and judgment. Lung Xiaoxiao sighed softly. All right. I believe you, so what should we do now? Lung Xiaoqing was out of ideas. Of course I'm going to show some concern for that little girl. Lung Xiaoxiao said with a smile. Lung Xiaoyu nodded upon hearing this. She was finally willing to put down her pride and go meet Lung Ruoxia. At this moment, an uninvited guest happened to visit Lung Ruoxia's snow garden. This uninvited guest was none other than Lung Yichun, who had been thrown out of the courtyard by the mother parasol tree time and time again, but had appeared in front of them again and again with an unyielding attitude. Lung Ruoxia and the mother parasol tree could not even be bothered to look at Lung Yichun, who was reporting to them almost every day to pick a fight. Anyway, this fellow would always question them with the same few words every time he came, and there was nothing new about it. They had heard him so many times that their ears had grown calluses. Of course, when they were sick of him, the mother parasol tree would display its might and throw him out of the courtyard like a chicken. This had simply become a fixed show for the past few days. The Luo family was numb to watching such performances every day. However, if Lung Yichun did not show up one day, they might not be used to it. In the garden, Lung Yichun, who had been here for a while, saw that he was completely ignored and started to howl at the top of his voice. Lung Ruoxia, you're too rude as a junior. I'm your elder. How can you ignore my existence? He said the same thing again. However, Lung Ruoxia was clearly in a good mood today. Even though she still did not raise her head to look at the other party, she was willing to respond. What do you want me to do? Lung Ruoxia said lazily. Of course, you must respectfully invite me to sit down, then warmly greet me and sincerely listen to my reprimand. Lung Yichun said as if it was a matter of course. After saying these words, he immediately felt a few more gazes with unknown meanings. Although he didn't know what they meant, he chose to ignore them. You're not sick, right? After listening to Lung Yichun's high-pitched speech, Lung Ruoxia couldn't help but hold her forehead and said in a speechless manner. Chapter 26-25. It's hard to guess Shui Er's thoughts. 1. Of course I'm not sick. I'm in good health. And the food is delicious. Lung Yichun didn't hear the sarcasm in Lung Ruoxia's words as he patted his chest and shouted. Hearing what he said, the onlookers couldn't help but burst into laughter. The hawk laughed so hard that its stomach hurt. It rolled on the stone table in the garden to show its good mood. Since you're not sick, why are you talking nonsense? Lung Ruoxia said with a straight face. Her face was filled with confusion. Nonsense? Who was talking nonsense? You wretched girl. Are you talking about me? Lung Yichun finally reacted and his face turned ashen from anger. He then jumped up and put on a stance as though he was going to fight to the death with Lung Ruoxia. This was definitely slander. Lung Yichun was furious. The consequences. Of course, Lung Ruoxia would not care about it. At least you're not so stupid that there's no cure. Lung Yichun, I'm talking about you. Lung Ruoxia said with a smile. The infuriating expression on her face was really infuriating. It was undeniable that with Lung Yichun, she had once again found the feeling of making one vomit blood from anger. This made her feel a little more comforted. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but glance at the golden hawk, who was laughing so hard that its belly was shaking. This little guy was definitely not normal. He could be considered her nemesis. You, how dare you? Lung Ruoxue, you actually dare to address your elder by his name. This is unfilial. I am going to punish you with the family law. Just you wait. Lung Yichun was so angry that his face turned green and white, then white and green again. And his words were even more incoherent. Elder? You. What right do you have to be my elder? You want to punish me with the family law? What a joke. Lung Yichun, when are you going to bring the family law? I'll be waiting for you. Lung Ruoxue replied calmly. Lung Ruoxue, you. Do you even have any respect for the Lung clan? After hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Lung Yichun was so angry that he didn't know what to say. He held it in for a long time before he finally managed to squeeze out such a sentence. He was thinking that this wretched girl from the Lung family should be afraid now, right? In this world, no one could ignore the power of a family clan, and Lung Ruoxue was no exception. Unfortunately, his plan was not bad, but it was destined to fail. If it was someone else, they might have been afraid of the clan, but the person he had met was Lung Ruoxue. A Lung Ruoxue who had never placed any importance on the power of her family. As such, his threats were naturally of no use. His words were no different from scratching an itch through one's boot. To Lung Ruoxue, it did not even hurt. I really don't have any. Lung Ruoxue was silent for a moment before she replied honestly. Oh, a good child should not lie. You unfilial descendant of the Lung family. I will report this to the forefather, and have you expelled from the Lung family. Lung Yichun was really furious this time, and he couldn't help but speak without thinking. Immediately, everyone heard a roar. How audacious! After these two words appeared, two figures appeared in the garden. When the grand elder of the Luo family saw who it was, he felt that the situation was getting more and more chaotic. How was he going to resolve this? He didn't know if his master would be blamed by the Lung family's old ancestor. Thanks, it had to be said that the thinking of the grand elder of the Luo family was still very traditional. Although he had heard that the relationship between his master and the Lung family was not very harmonious, in his opinion, no matter how bad the relationship was, his master was still a member of the Lung family. This was an undeniable fact. In that case, it was not a big problem for his master to say that he did not take the Lung family seriously in private. However, once this matter was put on the table, he felt that no matter what the outcome was, it would not be good for his master. One must know that in this world, the power of a clan was absolutely powerful. No one could ignore the power of the family and be unaffected by the influence of the family. The strength of the family also had endless benefits to the powerful. Therefore, logically speaking, the grand elder of the Luo family definitely did not wish for the two sides to fall out completely. At the very least, it was fine to maintain a respectful relationship on the surface. But now, the situation of being respectful to each other was probably impossible to maintain. Just as the grand elder of the Luo family was feeling a little worried, Lung Yichun had already dashed in front of Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao and complained. Old ancestors, this Lung Ruoxue is really unfilial. She actually doesn't respect our Lung family. She just admitted it herself. Then he turned to glare at Lung Ruoxue and roared. Lung Ruoxue, do you dare to deny it? Why should I deny it? Lung Ruoxue gave a faint smile as her beautiful eyes glanced at the person who had arrived. My two ancestors, you've heard it. Lung Ruoxue has admitted it herself. I suggest that we expel this unfilial descendant from the Lung family. Our Lung family cannot have such a descendant. Otherwise, it will affect the Lung family's reputation. Lung Yichun said insensibly, completely ignoring the two Lung clan's old ancestors' faces which had already turned black. When the Luo family members who were watching from the side saw this scene, they simply felt some sympathy for Lung Yichun. However, looking at the expressions of the two elders of the Lung family, they could not tell whether they were angry at Lung Yichun or angry at their own master for being unfilial. This was really a difficult question to understand. Get out of here. Lung Xiaoqing suppressed her anger and said coldly. Lung Yichun nodded and turned to Lung Ruoxue. Lung Ruoxue, did you hear that? The old ancestor wants you to get out of here. Looking at Lung Yichun's appearance of a fox exploiting a tiger's might, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but laugh. She sighed helplessly and said, Are you sure he was talking to me? Humph. Who else could it be if not you? It can't be me, right? Lung Yichun said in a matter-of-fact and self-righteous manner. It's possible. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. You, Lung Yichun pointed at Lung Ruoxue. He was so angry that he could not speak. Suddenly he felt his body sink, and then he felt like he was flying. Then, everyone heard a plop and a heavy object fell to the ground. The crowd was no stranger to such a voice. However, the person who did this had given them quite a shock. The person who had kicked was not Lung Ruoxue, or the parasol tree. It was Lung Xiaoqing, the Lung clan's greatest ancestor. After kicking Lung Yichun out, Lung Xiaoqing suddenly felt very pleased. No wonder the people around this girl liked to kick people so much. It felt good indeed. Patting off the dust on her hands, Lung Xiaoqing smiled faintly and said, Little girl, you don't have to take that idiot's words to heart. I'll punish him later. There's no need for punishment. Wouldn't it be better to keep it as my toy? Obviously, she didn't take Lung Yichun's words to heart because she didn't think of herself as a member of the Lung family. This was a fact that everyone in the Lung family knew, but Lung Yichun didn't know about it. This clearly explained the problem. Chapter 26-26. It's hard to guess Shui Er's thoughts too. Ah, all right. Lung Xiaoqing nodded helplessly. In reality, in his heart, Lung Yichun was just a clown who was used to please Lung Ruoxue. He was only afraid that Lung Yichun's words would make Lung Ruoxue angry, so he specially said that. But now that he saw that Lung Ruoxue did not take Lung Yichun's words seriously at all, his heart felt sour again, and it was especially unpleasant. However, Lung Ruoxue did not have the time to care about how Lung Xiaoqing felt. She asked directly, Is there something you need? Can't I come to see you if I have nothing to do? When Lung Xiaoqing heard Lung Ruoxue's words, he was a little unhappy. We don't visit without a reason. Our relationship doesn't seem to be good enough for us to visit each other, right? Lung Ruoxue deliberately put on a suspicious expression. As expected, Lung Xiaoqing was a little angry after hearing this. Stinky girl. Bad girl. He had already lowered himself to visit, but the other party actually thought that he had bad intentions. This was really too much. Lung Xiaoqing could not help but curse in his heart. However, he really had a reason for looking for this little girl. When he thought of this, he suddenly became listless. Sob. Bad girl. He was really too bad. Couldn't he leave him some face? Lung Xiaoqing was depressed. Unconsciously, his gaze towards Lung Ruoxue carried a trace of resentment. His gaze, on the other hand, gave Lung Ruoxue a shock. Ugh. Did I see wrongly? The Lung family's first ancestor was actually looking at her like she was a mistreated wife. Lung Ruoxue was a little shocked. Did she do something? Lung Ruoxue, who was reflecting on herself, was completely frightened by Lung Xiaoqing's resentful gaze. Fortunately, Lung Xiaoxiao noticed his eldest brother's strange behavior and pulled at the hem of his clothes in time. Only then did Lung Xiaoqing finally return to normal. However, just these few seconds were enough for Lung Ruoxue to be on tenterhooks. If you have something to say, just say it directly. Please don't look at me like that, I'm scared. Lung Ruoxue shivered and couldn't take it anymore. You still no fear? Lung Xiaoqing gritted her teeth when she heard that. I must know. Lung Ruoxue nodded her head seriously. She felt that she was too honest and did not even know how to lie. However, Lung Xiaoqing's expression turned even uglier after he heard what she said. How come I didn't see it? Lung Xiaoqing was speechless. This girl is really too shameless. Then I can only say that you don't have enough eyes. After Lung Ruoxue finished speaking seriously, she turned her gaze elsewhere, not looking at the man who was starting to exude endless resentment again. Lung Xiaoqing was so angry that he was speechless. He realized that this girl's ability to anger people to death had grown again. Thanks, cough cough. Lung Xiaoxiao, who was at the side, noticed the damn oppressive atmosphere. After coughing twice, he took the initiative to speak to Lung Ruoxue. Little girl, we indeed have something to discuss with you. Upon hearing this, Lung Ruoxue turned her beautiful eyes back to Lung Xiaoxiao and said, if you have something to say, say it. It's like this. The entire Haotian continent has been turned into a mess by Sun Tao and the others, and all the major families have suffered great losses. So, we hope that we can join forces to get rid of Sun Tao and the others and return peace to the Haotian continent. Lung Xiaoxiao tried to find the right words. Return the Haotian continent to its peaceful state? What does it have to do with me whether the Haotian continent is peaceful or chaotic? After Lung Ruoxue heard what Lung Xiaoxiao had to say, she asked with a puzzled look on her face. One should know that she was just a passerby in the Haotian continent. Now that her base camp was in the divinity, she naturally did not have to care about the Haotian continent's affairs. Therefore, she really had no intention of being a savior. However, after Lung Xiaoxiao heard Lung Ruoxue's words, he misunderstood. He thought that Lung Ruoxue didn't want to get involved in this matter, so he advised her with a heavy heart. Little girl, although you are no longer in the Haotian continent, your power is still here. Getting rid of Sun Tao and the others will be beneficial to their future development. So I hope you can consider it carefully. This is not only for the whole Haotian continent, but also for the Luo family and your Wanshan city. What if I say that I plan to move the Luo family and Wanshan city to the divinity? After Lung Xiaoxiao finished speaking, Lung Ruoxue smiled and told him this shocking news. As expected, Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao were both stunned when they heard that. Never in their dreams would they have thought that Lung Ruoxue would not want her subordinates to stay in the Haotian continent. Could it be that this girl had returned this time to bring her subordinates away? If that was the case, she really didn't need to care about Haotian. However, without her help, it would be even more difficult for them to get rid of Sun Tao than to ascend to heaven. When they thought of this, the two of them frowned. Observing their expressions, Lung Ruoxue threw out another piece of shocking news. If you guys want to leave this place, I can take you guys with me. His words successfully brought Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao back to their senses. We can't leave. If we leave, what will happen to the Lung clan? The two of them said in unison. The Lung clan. Before they could finish their words, they could not help but widen their eyes and look at Lung Ruoxue in disbelief. Did this girl mean that she was going to bring them along with her? Not just the two of them, but the entire Lung family? Was it like this? Thinking of this possibility, Lung Xiaoqing asked with uncertainty. You mean the Lung family will leave the Haotian continent with you? Yup. This is the will of my cheap old ancestor. However, it's up to you whether you want to leave or not. Lung Ruoxue said indifferently, casting this matter aside completely. She didn't want the two people in front of her to think that she had any deep feelings for the Lung family, which was why she wanted to bring them along. In fact, that was impossible. If our Lung family leaves, what will happen to the Haotian continent? Lung Xiaoqing couldn't help but ask. The Lung family's power on the Haotian continent was the result of countless years of development. Once they left, it meant that they would have to start over again. In addition, the divine world was a rather cruel place. How could they protect themselves when they arrived there with their strength? At that moment, Lung Xiaoqing considered many things. Like Lung Xiaoyu, he had returned from the godly mainland, so he naturally knew better than anyone who had never been there how cruel it was. However, when he thought about the Luo family in Wanshan City, he felt that since Lung Ruoxue dared to say that she would leave with her subordinates, she must have a way to protect herself. That was why he was in a dilemma. The Haotian continent has been reshuffled, and the Lung family will no longer exist. Lung Ruoxue replied honestly. Wouldn't that be too easy for Sun Tao and the others? If we leave, we'll just give them some space? At the thought of this, Lung Xiaoqing felt a little indignant. Don't tell me you want to live in the Haotian continent forever and fight for territory with Sun Tao. Are you so short-sighted? No wonder the Lung family is so oppressed by Sun Tao. Why don't you think about it? You've been living in the Haotian continent, and you'll have to leave here sooner or later. Your strength won't improve much here. Or do you want to stay here and wait for your death? Everything in the Haotian continent, no matter how noble, is just a fleeting cloud in the divine world. The divine world is a place where ambitious people should fight for. Don't you want to fight for a place in the divine world? Lung Ruoxue said with a look of disdain. Chapter 26-27. It's hard to guess Xue Er's thoughts. 3. Her words were not polite at all. However, Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao did not have any temper at all when they heard her. It was undeniable that what Lung Ruoxue said was the truth. Although the immortal realm was cruel, it was still a place that everyone yearned for. On the Haotian continent, so what if one became a top family? Wasn't he still beaten up by the people Sun Tao brought back from the divine realm, and forced to hide in the proud cold city? They didn't dare to step out of the city for fear of being attacked by Sun Tao and the others. They had had enough of this kind of sullen life. In a short moment, their minds immediately became clear, and they thought it through. The divine world was the biggest stage. They could not lose their will to fight in the divine world, just because of its cruelty. Such an idea of not retreating was definitely a great taboo for cultivators. More importantly, Lung Ruoxue was right. In the Haotian continent, their status seemed to be noble, but their strength had not improved at all. If this continued, in the long run, they would really be sitting around and waiting for death. After thinking it through in an instant, Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao immediately looked at each other and made a decision at the same time. We agree to bring the Lung clan with you. After Lung Xiaoqing had thought it through, she immediately became decisive and spoke without any hesitation. Little girl Xue Er, when we reach the immortal realm, you have to take care of us more. Lung Xiaoxiao added with a smile. Even though his tone sounded like he was joking, this was indeed what he truly thought. If they really moved the entire Lung family to the divinity, the Lung family would probably have more to rely on. Lung Ruoxue. I can only guarantee that the Lung family is safe within a certain area of the divine world. Therefore, I hope that you can restrain your clansmen. If someone insensible provokes a big figure that even I can't handle, I can't do anything about it. Lung Ruoxue put the ugly words out first. The important person she was referring to was naturally Wucheng. However, she didn't want to say it out loud, in case she scared the two of them. As long as we can have a safe place for the Lung family to slowly develop, that's enough. Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao nodded at the same time. They were already very satisfied with Lung Ruoxue's progress. However, at this point in time, they still didn't know that the god world that Lung Ruoxue was talking about was a completely different place from what they had in mind. Once the decision was made, Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao felt a sense of relief. It was as if a huge rock had been lifted off their shoulders. At this moment, they thought of Sun Tao and the rest and felt that it was nothing. Those who were going to develop in the divine realm could not limit their vision to the Haotian continent, which was just a small place. After they had let go of their grudge with Sun Tao, Lung Ruoxue had brought up the matter of Sun Tao again. The two of them were stunned for a long time before they said, Xue Er, didn't you say you didn't want to argue with Sun Tao? Did I say that? Lung Ruoxue blinked her beautiful eyes and said with an innocent look. In her heart, she couldn't help but wonder, did she look like such a kind person? Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao were completely speechless. What did this girl mean by this? Previously, when they had said that they would deal with Sun Tao together, didn't Xue Er clearly show no interest in it? Now that they had decided to leave the Haotian continent with Lung Ruoxue, she wanted to deal with Sun Tao. What was this? Was he teasing them? The two of them were quite depressed about this. They felt that Xue Er's thoughts were very difficult to guess. Lung Ruoxue glanced at their expressions and laughed evilly. Do you think you'll be kind enough to let go of someone who bullied my subordinate? But didn't you say before that? Lung Xiaoxiao could not help but want to remind him. But he had only spoken half of it when he tactfully swallowed the second half of his sentence. I'm just saying that I'm a person who has left the Haotian continent. What does it have to do with me whether the Haotian continent is quiet or not? Am I right? Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. That's right. Lung Xiaoxiao nodded gloomily. He had finally realized what was going on. Had he said the wrong thing? She was not interested in the peace and quiet of Haotian continent, nor did she want to be a savior, but she was very interested in Sun Tao. Now he finally understood what Lung Ruoxue meant. Sun Tao still had to be eliminated. After he came to his senses, Lung Xiaoxiao did not say a word and waited for Lung Ruoxia's next words with anticipation. "I'll have to trouble the two of you to send a message to the families that were persecuted by Sun Tao, and invite them to the Lung family to discuss this matter." Lung Ruoxia said to Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao with a smile. "What do you want to do?" The two of them asked curiously. "Of course I'm here to discuss business with them. You guys don't think I'm doing this for free, do you?" Lung Ruoxia smiled ambiguously. She would not help others to take back their territory for nothing. One should know that no one would treasure something that was obtained too easily. "Thanks, I'll send someone to inform the great clans." When Lung Xiaoqing heard this, he immediately understood what Lung Ruoxia meant. It looked like this little girl was planning to make a huge profit. "I'm sorry to trouble you." Lung Ruoxia was in a good mood. She found Lung Xiaoqing much more pleasing to the eye. "It's no trouble at all." After Lung Xiaoqing finished speaking, he turned and ran. If he stayed any longer, he might fall into this girl's trap. Oh my god! This girl was a terrifying vampire. Lung Xiaoqing's heart ached. Upon seeing this, Lung Xiaoxiao also left. The mother parasol tree could not help but chuckle as she watched the two of them leave as if they had seen a ghost. "Little girl, you've scared them. What's there to be afraid of? Do they really think him their savior?" Lung Ruoxia was speechless. She had always firmly believed that there was nothing in this world that could be obtained without effort. If one wanted to obtain something that one had high hopes for, one would naturally have to pay the price. As for whether they were willing to pay the price, it naturally depended on the person. After Lung Xiaoqing sent out the message, the first to send someone over was the Lan family. Lung Ruoxia only knew Lan Lai as the representative of the Lan family. The rest of them were unfamiliar to her. They were definitely not the Lan family elders that she had bullied before. After seeing Lung Ruoxia, Lan Lai was as warm as ever. He even asked about Bing Yao. One had to know that he had been thinking about Bing Yao all these years. He didn't know if that little thing missed him. However, Lung Ruoxia told him regretfully that Bing Yao had been in closed-door cultivation ever since she went to the God world. She probably did not have the time to miss him. Lan Lai's face fell when he heard this. It was obvious that he had suffered a heavy blow. Seeing that Lan Lai was still the same as before, and didn't seem to have changed much, Lung Ruoxia felt a sense of familiarity. Even her tone when speaking to Lan Lai had become much gentler. Seeing this, Lung Wudi laughed bitterly in his heart. "It seems like Shui is still angry with me." That little girl wasn't even angry with the old ancestor anymore, but she kept on being angry with the mother and son, and ignored them. This made him and his mother very worried. The main culprit was obviously the old ancestor, so why did Shui only hate the mother and son? This was too unfair. Lung Wudi felt a little disgruntled. However, he knew that this was because Shui had acknowledged them. That was why she was even more angry at their actions. As he watched Lung Ruoxia and Lan Lai chatting happily, he felt a deep sense of regret. They were even more envious and jealous of Lan Lai. However, Lan Lai and Lung Ruoxia had clearly ignored Lung Wudi, who was constantly emitting a resentful aura, and were chatting happily. Lung Ruoxia had even specially mentioned Netherblue. When Lan Lai heard that Lung Ruoxia had met Lan Ming in the God world, he immediately requested that Lung Ruoxia bring him to the God world to have some fun. Hearing this, Lung Ruoxia sized up Lan Lai. If he were to go to the divine realm with his strength at the level of a mystical emperor, in addition to his somewhat carefree character, you really want to go to the divinity? Lung Ruoxia squinted her beautiful eyes and asked as she glanced at Lan Lai. Hehe. I do want to, but I definitely can't go to the divine realm with my strength. Shui, in the future when I can also go to the divine realm, you have to take care of me. I can't let others bully me. Lan Lai requested with a smile. No problem. But if you want to go now, I can take you there. Lung Ruoxia thought for a while and couldn't help but think to herself. If I bring this guy to the divine world, Blue Nether should be very happy, right? Thinking of Lan Ming's hesitant expression before she left, Lung Ruoxia knew that Lan Ming also wanted her to take care of the Lan family, but he was too embarrassed to ask because there were too many things. She felt that since she had already taken in Lan Ming, she naturally didn't care about Lan Lai. Lan Lai's eyes went wide when he heard her. he asked in disbelief. Swear, can you really take me there now? As long as you want to. Lung Ruoxue smiled. I want to. Of course I want to. But, Lan Lai was a little hesitant. As the young master of the Lan family, he couldn't leave so easily. Although he didn't care about the title of the young master of the Lan family, he still had to consider what that old man thought. Can't bear to part with the Lan family? Lung Ruoxue was well aware that the Lan family was different from the Lung family. Even though she didn't admit that she was a member of the Lung family, she was still a member of the Lung family in the eyes of outsiders. So it was only natural for her to take the members of the Lung family with her when she left Haotian continent. However, the Lan family had nothing to do with her. She couldn't possibly take all the members of the Lan family with her just because Lan Lai couldn't bear to do it, right? That was obviously not realistic. Besides, she had robbed the Lan family of a lot of money back then. Some of the Lan family members might still see her as an enemy. Chapter 26-28. You have an opinion? 1. It's not entirely the Lan family. Lan Lai said, a little embarrassed. His heart was in a deep dilemma. He only had feelings for certain members of the Lan family, and these people were enough to influence his thoughts of staying in the Lan family. I understand. Lung Ruoxue patted Lan Lai's shoulder to show her understanding. Hearing this, Lan Lai became even more depressed. Woo! How he wished he could be as carefree as Shui. However, with his family dragging him down, that idea was clearly an impossible dream. Lan Lai, who had returned to his room after his conversation with Lung Ruoxue, was deeply worried. At that moment, a middle-aged man pushed the door open and entered. Lan Lai quickly stood up and greeted him respectfully. Old ancestor. Sit down. That girl was Lung Ruoxue? The Lung family sent a letter to us because of her? As soon as the middle-aged man sat down, questions shot at Lan Lai like a cannon. Lan Lai didn't know which one to answer first. After some thought, Lan Lai nodded. She is Lung Ruoxue. As for whether the Lung clan sent us the letter because of her, I'm not sure. Lan Lai knew that Lung Ruoxue was quite famous in the Lan family. This was why the Grand Ancestor, who had not come out of his closed-door cultivation for a long time, had heard of her. However, he was not sure if the Grand Ancestor would make things difficult for her, because of what Shui had done to the Lan family in the past. However, he knew very well that if the Grand Ancestor made things difficult for Lung Ruoxue would definitely not be the one to suffer. After some thought, Lan Lai couldn't help but remind him. Ancestor, Shui has just returned from the divine realm. The reason why he said this was because he hoped that the old ancestor would not act rashly. After all, Shui was someone who had gone to the divine world. She was so powerful that even the old ancestor would not be a match for her. I know, the middle-aged man nodded, then turned to the serious-looking Lan Lai. Don't worry, I won't cause trouble for that girl because of what happened in the past. Some people in the Lan family are blind, so you can't blame anyone else. Lan Lai was relieved to hear that. In reality, even if he had not reminded her, this Lan family's old grandmadam clearly had no intention of making things difficult for Lung Ruoxue. He was not a fool with no judgment. From the Lung family's attitude towards Lung Ruoxue, he knew that this little girl was not to be trifled with. Moreover, to be able to go to the divine realm and return safely, this in itself also showed that this girl was a capable person. Everyone had to respect the strong. In just a short meeting, the Lan family's old ancestor had identified Lung Ruoxue as a powerful cultivator. Now that powerful cultivator was willing to interact with them on an equal footing without putting on any airs. He believed that this was all due to Lan Lai's efforts. The Lan family's old ancestor glanced at Lan Lai and couldn't help but say enviously, "You've made a good friend, Lai. You have to get along well with him." "Yes, I will." Lan Lai nodded blankly. He thought to himself, would he dare to not get along well with Shui? That girl was fierce. He was no match for him, and he knew his own limits. After saying this, the Lan family's old ancestor turned around and left in relief. Lan Lai was still at a loss as he watched his ancestor leave. What was this situation? Did old grandmadam come to his room just to tell him to get along well with Shui? This was such a fantasy. Lan Lai didn't understand, so he stopped thinking about it. At the same time, the parasol tree that was sitting in the snow garden smiled at Lung Ruoxue and said, "That Lan clan's old ancestor is quite self-aware." What? Lung Ruoxue did not understand the mother parasol tree's words, and could only look at her with a puzzled expression. Ha ha ha. The Lan family's ancestor told Lan Lai to get along with you. He must have noticed that you're not ordinary. The mother parasol tree smiled slyly. Thanks. Lung Ruoxue was speechless when she heard this. In fact, she wanted to say that she had made many great achievements in Haotian continent, and it was not a big deal that some people were still afraid of her. But looking at the mother parasol tree, it was obviously very surprised. Then she heard the mother parasol tree say, "Little girl, it seems that no matter where you are always restless." Was this a compliment? Senior, am very well behaved. Lung Ruoxue said, feeling wronged. All right. You're so well behaved that you've already made everyone tremble in fear. Ha ha ha. The mother parasol tree laughed evilly. Hearing her words, Lung Ruoxue could only feel helpless. However, she could not deny that the mother parasol tree's words made no sense. AI. This fact made her quite depressed. The mother parasol tree could tell that Lung Ruoxue was a little depressed, so it stopped teasing her. However, it was rare for the parasol tree to see such an expression on Lung Ruoxue's face, so it still laughed unkindly. In the next few days, the representatives of the major forces arrived one after another. After they had moved into the Lung family's guest house, the representatives of the various forces had communicated with each other in private. Although they knew that the Lung family had invited them here to discuss the matter of Sun Tao and the others, they did not know how they would discuss it. With a hint of curiosity, after waiting for a few more days, the representatives of the major forces finally arrived. After everyone was gathered, Lung Xiaoqing personally went to look for Lung Ruoxue to inform her of the matter. When Lung Ruoxue heard that the representatives of the various major factions had arrived, she requested Lung Xiaoqing to arrange for all the representatives to attend the meeting in the meeting hall 3 days later. Even though Lung Xiaoqing did not understand why Lung Ruoxue had arranged for the meeting to be held 3 days later, he still immediately sent someone to inform the various major representatives of this news. After he left, the mother parasol tree asked Lung Ruoxue with a puzzled look, "Shuer, why is the meeting only 3 days later? Isn't it better to solve the problem earlier?" Senior, you don't understand the evil nature of humans. If we hold a meeting immediately, some people will think that we urgently need them to express their stance. I set the meeting 3 days later to let them know that this matter is not urgent for us at all. Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. Humans are indeed cunning. When the mother parasol tree heard this, it said fearfully, "I can't help it. There are too many people in this world who want to get something without working." Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. That's true. Shuer, you have to think about it before the meeting. There will definitely be people who will object to your proposal. The mother parasol tree could not help but remind him. Don't worry, I've already thought about it. Lung Ruoxue said confidently. And these 3 days were an unspeakable torment for the major forces. They had thought that once they arrived at the Lung family's residence, the other party would eagerly tell them the plan. Who knew that the other party wasn't in a hurry at all, and the Lung family members even acted as if nothing had happened and did what they had to do. As a result, many representatives couldn't keep their cool anymore. They couldn't figure out what the Lung family was thinking. The 3 days passed by like a year for the representatives of the major forces. The meeting was held in the largest chamber of the Lung family. After the various representatives took their respective seats according to the size of their respective factions, they all turned their gazes toward Lung Xiaoqing, who was sitting at the main seat. Chapter 26-29, You Have an Opinion? 2. Lung Xiaoqing coughed twice. He was not used to being the center of attention for a moment. However, he was a superior after all, so he quickly adjusted his depressed state of mind, and said to the people present with a serious look, I know that everyone is very anxious about this meeting. Let's officially start the meeting now. After he finished his opening remarks, he gave Lung Xiaoxiao a look. Lung Xiaoxiao nodded and said, Everyone, I've invited you here today to discuss how to deal with Sun Tao and his group. Senior, if you have something to say, you can just say it. The Lan family's old ancestor said sensibly after hearing Lung Xiaoxiao's words. He knew that the two brothers had been building the business for a long time, and what they said would definitely not satisfy all the forces. Moreover, he wanted to befriend the Lung family, so he naturally had to help them at this time. Yup. Senior, if you have any good ideas, just tell us. If it's feasible, we won't object. Another representative immediately expressed his opinion. Lung Xiaoxiao frowned when he heard this. He thought to himself, if my method was so easy to open up, would I still need to be so conflicted? To be honest, he had never asked someone for such a thing so directly in his life. Generally speaking, even if there were some transactions between the major forces, most of them would be rather subtle. But now what he wanted to say was, if you want to deal with Sun Tao, you just have to pay a certain reward. He really couldn't bring himself to say such words. Just as Lung Xiaoxiao was in a dilemma, a light and crisp voice was heard in the meeting hall. I can help you deal with Sun Tao, but you have to pay me a certain amount. Along with the voice, two extremely beautiful women entered. Among these forces, most of them had only heard of Lung Ruoxia's name. Not many of them had seen her in person. Therefore, many of them were shocked and surprised by the arrival of these two stunning beauties. When someone saw Lung Ruoxia and the mother parasol tree, he immediately said, do you know how many powerhouses Sun Tao has around him? Even if all of us join forces, we don't dare to say that we can deal with Sun Tao. Do you think a weak woman like you can deal with Sun Tao and the others? The person who spoke had never met Lung Ruoxia before. However, Lung Ruoxia was not angry after hearing his words. Instead, she smiled and said, in the entire Haotian continent, if even I can't deal with Sun Tao, then there's really no one who can do anything to him. Do you believe me? I don't believe it. The man was very honest. It doesn't matter if you don't believe it, as long as someone does. Lung Ruoxia smiled and turned to the others. Trust me, as long as you pay me a certain amount of money, I'll be able to deal with Sun Tao. How do you want to deal with Sun Tao and the rest? The Lan family's old ancestor could not help but ask curiously. He naturally believed in Lung Ruoxia's strength, so he really wanted to know how Lung Ruoxia would deal with Sun Tao. All the powerhouses in the Haotian continent could not do anything to Sun Tao. If Lung Ruoxia did not give an explanation, it would not be easy to earn the reward. That will depend on how many of you are willing to ask me for help. If all the forces have hired me, they'll naturally exterminate you and return peace to the Haotian continent. However, if only a portion of the forces have such a request, then I will only guarantee the safety of the forces that are paying the reward. As for the other forces, they can only hope for the best. Lung Ruoxia chuckled lightly. Thanks, her words were very clear, and the major forces also understood. What the other party meant was that if she wanted to get rid of Sun Tao, all the major forces on the Haotian continent had to pay. Otherwise, she would only care about the safety of the forces who paid. In that case, the other forces would naturally be in a worse situation than now. Ruthless. How ruthless. It was obvious that he wanted all the forces to hire her. Otherwise, those forces that were reluctant to spend money would definitely suffer from Sun Tao's violent revenge, and the consequences would naturally be imaginable. At the thought of this, someone asked about Lung Ruoxia's remuneration out of concern. 50% of all the assets of your major forces. Lung Ruoxia calmly stated the number that caused the various major powers to feel heartache. This is too much. Someone immediately objected. The price is clearly stated, and I'm honest. Do as you please. I'm only going for this price anyway. To be honest, I'm giving you a friendly price because I've lived in the Haotian continent for a few years. Lung Ruoxia said indifferently. How many years did he live on the Haotian continent? What was the meaning of this? Some of the more meticulous people immediately grasped the main point of this sentence, and secretly discussed it with their companions. I want to know, if we pay, how will you guarantee our safety? Someone asked. Now everyone in the Haotian continent was in a state of panic. All the major forces were afraid that their territories would be taken over by Sun Tao. Therefore, they had not been able to eat well or sleep well all these years. They had been living like stray dogs all day long in fear, and they did not know when such days would come to an end. More importantly, who knew when the faction they were in would become Sun Tao's? After all, that guy was very ambitious, and the people around him were like fiends, causing unspeakable suffering for their original factions. I've said it before. If you all agree and are willing to give me 50% of your assets as my reward, I will naturally help you get rid of Sun Tao and all his forces. However, this is a treatment that only group purchases get. If someone is unwilling and cannot meet the conditions of the group purchase, I will not do that. As for those who failed to meet the conditions of group purchase and have paid the reward, I will set up a defensive formation outside your territory. With this formation, you naturally don't have to worry about the attack of Sun Tao and the others. Lung Ruoxue replied honestly. A defensive formation? Would that work? I've heard that Luo City already has a defensive formation. Isn't Luo City in Wen Yuan's hands now? A man immediately questioned after hearing Lung Ruoxue's words. Hehe. You're right, Luo City has a defensive formation and Luo City has indeed fallen into Wen Yuan's hands. However, the fall of Luo City had nothing to do with the formation. Lung Ruoxue said coldly. What does that have to do with? A traitor? The man sneered. It was no secret in the Haotian continent that there was a traitor in the Luo family, and that he had led the wolf into the house. However, what he said at this time seemed to be a slap to the Luo family's face. The grand elder of the Luo family, who was sitting in the middle of the crowd, felt his face burn as he listened to the other party's words. Then he stood up from his seat and said loudly, "That's right. There's a traitor in the Luo family, and that's why we're in such a state. I want to remind everyone to be careful of the traitor. Otherwise, it's useless no matter how good your defense is." Well said. The Lan clan's old ancestor agreed with these words. However, some people were still looking for trouble. The man from before continued to provoke them. There's a traitor in the Luo family, and they've fallen from their status as a top family. I wonder if your master knows about this? She couldn't have forgotten about you guys on the Haotian continent, could she? Chapter 2630. You have an opinion? 3. What are you talking about? Master will never forget us. The grand elder of the Luo family roared. Ever since the fall of the Luo family, Lung Ruoxue, who was behind the Luo family, had been exposed by someone. Therefore, the entire Haotian continent now knew that Lung Ruoxue was their backer. As the grand elder of the Luo family, he could not allow someone to use his master as an excuse. Yo, you really called me master? The man said with a proud smile. So what if you call me master? She's the master of the Luo family. Moreover, master's standards are very high. Not just anyone can acknowledge him as their master. The grand elder of the Luo family said proudly. I say, old man Luo, you've really lost the face of the strong. You've acknowledged a woman as your master, yet you're still so smug. Even if you don't find it embarrassing, I'm flustered on your behalf. The man said with a look of disdain. You can say whatever you want about me, but you can't insult my master. Seeing that the person who spoke was obviously looking down on women, the grand elder of the Luo family was so furious that he could not hold back his anger. However, when Lung Ruoxue gave him a look that told him to calm down, the grand elder of the Luo family miraculously calmed down in the eyes of others and obediently returned to his seat. When the man saw this, he thought that the other party had retreated. Just as he was secretly pleased with himself, he suddenly felt the pressure behind him increase. When he turned around, Lung Ruoxue was already standing behind him. What are you doing? The man's heart trembled for no reason, and his voice trembled. He didn't know why, but this woman gave him so much pressure. This was definitely not normal. Don't be afraid. I just want to ask you something. From what you're saying, you seem to have a lot of complaints about the master of the Luo family. Lung Ruoxue's smile was rather amiable, but her gentle smile caused the other party's heart to palpitate in fear. The other party did not even know what he was afraid of. Of course, acknowledging a woman as his master. This is simply a disgrace to the strong. When the man heard this, he immediately gathered his courage and said, Then what kind of master should I acknowledge so that you won't feel that I'm losing face for the strong? Sun Tao. Lung Ruoxue squinted her eyes and said in a sharp tone, What Sun Tao? Don't you spout nonsense. When the man heard the name Sun Tao, he was so scared that his little heart was pounding. He looked at the people around him with an uneasy expression. Seeing that they did not have much reaction to the woman's words, he was slightly relieved. Whether I'm talking nonsense or not, you should know in your heart. However, it's none of my business who you acknowledge as your master, but it's my business that you bully my subordinates. Lung Ruoxue laughed coldly as she grabbed the man's collar and pulled him in front of her like a little chick. Who bullied your subordinate? Don't you slander me. Everyone's eyes were watching. You can't wrong me. The man immediately cried out his innocence. Why was this woman's aura so strong? He felt like he was about to suffocate. This feeling was really uncomfortable. I've wronged you, do I need to? Oh right, I forgot to tell you. I am the master of the Luo family, Lung Ruoxue. Do you have any objections? Lung Ruoxue said with a smile that was not a smile. When the first elder of the Luo family heard this, he was like a proud rooster as he held his head high and puffed out his chest. He was extremely pleased with himself. The moment he heard Lung Ruoxue's name, the man, who was full of fighting spirit, instantly wilted. He asked carefully, You're really Lung Ruoxue? Aren't you in the divine realm? Why did you appear in the Haotian continent? Hehe. Do you think that someone would dare to impersonate my name? I was in the divinity, but I heard that someone in the Haotian continent was bullying my subordinates, so I came back to take a look. Do you have a problem with that? Lung Ruoxue smiled as she retorted. No objections. The man immediately said, his entire body covered in cold sweat. Woo. Why was he so unlucky to have bumped into Lung Ruoxue? If he had known that the beauty in front of him was Lung Ruoxue, he would not have dared to bring up this killing god. Even though he had never met Lung Ruoxue in person, he had heard all of her past deeds by heart. This person was definitely not easy to get along with. I heard that she's also a killing god in the divine realm. At this moment, the man was filled with regret. Lung Ruoxue, who he had thought would not appear in the Haotian continent, had appeared without a trace. What should he do? He didn't know if he would be able to return alive this time. You really don't have any objections? Lung Ruoxue asked, seemingly worried. I really didn't. Ancestor, treat what I just said as a fart and let it go. I don't dare to speak nonsense again, really. I promise. The man begged for mercy. But what if I have some opinions about you? Lung Ruoxue said with a conflicted expression. The man was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. He couldn't understand why a big shot like Lung Ruoxue would keep harping on him when he was just a minor character. This was definitely not something an expert would do. Absolutely not. Thanks, ancestor. I truly know that I'm in the wrong. Can you be magnanimous and spare me? The man continued to plead, and his fawning appearance made everyone look down on him. However, at this moment, the man couldn't care much. Saving his little life was the most important thing. How much is self-respect worth? There's a saying that only women and villains are difficult to raise. I don't know if you've heard of it. So you think he'll let you go? I'm sorry, I've never been generous. Lung Ruoxue immediately rejected the other party's suggestion. Ancestor, I know I'm wrong. What do you want me to do to make you let me go? The man said with a long face. It's simple. Tell me about your master. I'm very interested in him. Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. I. The man trembled when he heard this. He couldn't even form a complete sentence. Don't tell me you don't have a master. Lung Ruoxue warned indifferently and released some pressure. The man's face instantly turned pale, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. In the end, he couldn't bear the powerful pressure and cried, Woo! I have a master. I've turned to Sun Tao. After the other party had finished speaking, Lung Ruoxue threw him on the ground and stood at the side as if nothing had happened. When everyone heard this, their faces changed. They did not expect Sun Tao and his group to not only take over the territories of many forces, but also cultivate spies. For a moment, everyone looked at the people around them with distrusting eyes. They could not be sure that there was no one around them who had been bribed by Sun Tao. Once such a thought appeared, it was like a wildfire that started a prairie fire, and they could not suppress it no matter what. Looking at the distrusting expressions of the crowd, Lung Ruoxue could not help but sneer. This was the fragile trust in human nature. The atmosphere in the meeting hall was strangely heavy. After a long time, someone finally reacted and looked at Lung Ruoxue with a burning gaze. "Senior, what should we do now?" "I told you." Lung Ruoxue didn't want to repeat her words. "The Lan family is willing to accept your conditions." At this time, the Lan family's old ancestor took the lead and said, to him, money was just a worldly possession. Protecting the Lan family's status was the most important thing. "You won't regret this." Lung Ruoxue was very satisfied with the tactfulness of the Lan family's old ancestor, and spoke in a very friendly manner. The Lan family's old ancestor nodded at Lung Ruoxue as well. Both parties had reached a preliminary agreement. With the Lan family taking the lead, the factions that knew Lung Ruoxue's strength were naturally willing to pay a certain price. They only hoped that they would not be harassed by Sun Tao and the rest. Of course, it would be even better if they could get rid of Sun Tao and the rest. However, from the looks of it now, not all the factions had agreed to the other party's conditions. The other party would obviously not do that. This fact made them very sad. However, they were well aware that Lung Ruoxue was not someone who could be manipulated by others. When Lung Ruoxue saw that things were almost done, she left the meeting hall with the parasol tree mother tree. She left the rest of the matters to Lung Xiaoqing and his brother. The two of them had completely become Lung Ruoxue's coolies, but they still looked like they were willing to do so. This was because this was definitely a good start for their relationship with Lung Ruoxue. After signing the contract with the various factions that had agreed to Lung Ruoxue's conditions, they brought the contract to Lung Ruoxue. Flipping through the thick contract, Lung Ruoxue nodded in satisfaction. Not bad, 2/3 of the factions had agreed to her conditions. As for the remaining 1/3, most of them were still hesitating. Hence, the Lung brothers gave the factions a few days to discuss this matter seriously. Fortunately, the representatives of the major forces who came this time were all masters of the family. Otherwise, this matter would have been delayed even longer. Many of the major powers that had agreed to Lung Ruoxue's conditions were urging them to take action as soon as possible. After telling Lung Ruoxue that some forces hoped that Lung Ruoxue would quickly set up a defensive formation for her clan, Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao remained silent. Lung Ruoxue did not say anything. The atmosphere immediately became tense. After a long while, Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly and said, "They would rather I set up a defensive formation for them?" "Swear, what do you mean? Didn't you say that yourself?" Lung Xiaoqing asked when he heard that. He was about to be confused by Lung Ruoxue. "Don't you want to set up a defensive formation for them?" Lung Xiaoxiao replied in confusion as well. However, it was clear that his tolerance for Lung Ruoxue's words was much higher than his elder brother's. Hence, his mind was still clear, and he felt that Lung Ruoxue's words definitely had a deeper meaning. As for the deeper meaning, he did not know. Chapter 2631. Layout 1. It's not that I don't want to, but it's too troublesome to set up a defensive formation for each family. As a result, it will take at least a year and a half to complete it. So I'm more inclined to help them get rid of Sun Tao, the root of their disaster. That'll save us a lot of trouble. Lung Ruoxue smiled as she glanced at Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao before she spoke. When the two heard this, they felt that it really made sense. However, not all the forces had signed the contract. They couldn't force all the forces to sign the contract, right? Instantly, the two of them were at a loss. Looking at the two's gloomy expressions, Lung Ruoxue smiled and asked, "What kind of forces are those who haven't signed a contract?" "Most of them are from small and medium-sized forces. They are not rich to begin with and are short-sighted, so they are simply reluctant to pay this reward." Lung Xiaoqing explained helplessly. If it were the major factions, they would be more willing to pay. This was because the top factions basically had no doubts about Lung Ruoxue's strength. However, the small and mid-sized factions were not well informed, so they did not know much about Shui'er's strength. Naturally, they were not willing to pay this reward so easily. In my opinion, It's not that those small and medium-sized forces are short-sighted and can't bear to fork out this sum of money. They're just too scheming. After hearing Lung Xiaoqing's words, Lung Ruoxue could not help but sneer. You're saying that they think they can take advantage of us? That's why you haven't agreed? Lung Xiaoqing understood what was going on the moment he heard that. Thinking about it carefully, it seemed to be possible. But hadn't Schwer already made it clear? If not all the forces had hired her, she would not have done anything to Sun Tao and the others. Why were there still forces holding on to the hope of getting lucky? In this world, there were always some people who would not shed tears until they saw the coffin. Lung Xiaoqing was having a headache over those people's petty thoughts. He didn't know what to do. Lung Ruoxue nodded and smiled. Are those forces still in the city? Yes, they are still staying in the Lung clan's guest house. Lung Xiaoqing replied honestly. From now on, ask them to leave the Lung family. Lung Ruoxue said after some thought. This isn't very good, is it? They're all guests invited by the Lung family, and it's impolite to invite them out. It might affect the reputation of our Lung family if word gets out. Lung Xiaoqing said hesitantly. Why would a superforce like the Lung family care about the opinions of some small and medium-sized forces? After Lung Ruoxue heard Lung Xiaoqing's words, she felt that it was rather laughable. There's no other way. I'd rather offend a gentleman than a villain. Some of those small and medium-sized forces don't have a good reputation. If we offend them, we might pour some dirty water on the Lung family. It's a critical time now, and it's not good to make too many enemies, or it will affect the Lung family's reputation in the Haotian continent. Lung Xiaoqing said helplessly. Don't forget that the Lung family is about to leave the Haotian continent. Why would they care about their reputation? Lung Ruoxue reminded him calmly. Lung Xiaoqing was a little embarrassed. How could he have forgotten such an important matter? They were about to leave the Haotian continent, and would never come back. In that case, why should he care about what those small and medium-sized forces thought? With that thought in mind, Lung Xiaoqing quickly said to Lung Ruoxue, I'll ask them to leave the Lung family now. Those people were obviously treating the Lung family as a safe haven now. The Lung family really had no obligation to provide for them for free. Lung Xiaoqing then turned around and left to handle the matter. Lung Xiaoxiao had wanted to tag along, but he was asked to stay by Lung Ruoxue alone. Looking at Lung Ruoxue, Lung Xiaoxiao was very uncertain as to why this little girl had asked him to stay behind. He immediately felt uneasy. Thanks, Lung Ruoxue could not help but chuckle when she saw that Lung Xiaoxiao was a little ill at ease. Are you very afraid of me? I'm not afraid. Lung Xiaoxiao braced himself and said, no matter what, I'm still this little girl's ancestor in terms of bloodline. How embarrassing would it be if I were to admit that I'm afraid of her? I can't admit it. I can't admit it. However, no matter how much he consoled himself in his heart, his expression still revealed his nervousness, and cold sweat oozed out of his forehead. Damn it! Why did this little girl give off so much pressure? Seeing that he was being stubborn, Lung Ruoxue did not expose him. Instead, she waved at Lung Xiaoxiao, who immediately walked towards her like an obedient puppy. He whispered a few words into Lung Xiaoxiao's ear, and Lung Xiaoxiao's face revealed a hint of surprise. She then looked at Lung Ruoxue with an inexplicable expression. She thought to herself, no matter who I offend in this world, I can't offend this little girl. Will this work? Lung Xiaoxiao said with a hint of uncertainty after he heard that. This is just a strategy. Believe me, it will succeed. Lung Ruoxue said confidently. All right. I'll make the arrangements. Lung Xiaoxiao said with a nod. He knew that he could not reject this at all. Even though this girl had told him this in private, she was just giving him an order. She would not give him a chance to reject her at all. Sigh. He accepted his fate. However, after some thought, Lung Xiaoxiao could not help but ask curiously. Why did you ask me to handle this matter? What he meant was, why didn't he tell his big brother? You don't look like a pedantic and rule-abiding person. You're the most suitable person to handle this kind of thing. Lung Ruoxue gave Lung Xiaoxiao an answer. However, Lung Xiaoxiao did not know if he should be happy or worried after hearing this. Why did this little girl's words not sound like a compliment? However, it seemed that he could only take it as a compliment. Otherwise, he would be depressed to death. After he found out the reason why Lung Ruoxue had looked for him, Lung Xiaoxiao left the falling snow garden with a heavy heart. As soon as he left, the mother parasol tree, who was watching from the side, immediately laughed evilly and said with a look of understanding, "Girl, you're asking him to do bad things, right? It's not a bad thing. It's just a small strategy." Lung Ruoxue said innocently, "All right. It's definitely not a good thing." The mother parasol tree sighed. Hee. Senior, let's just be tactful. There's no need to say this kind of thing. Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. That's true. But Shui, the guest house is quite lively now. Aren't you going to take a look? The mother parasol tree said with a mysterious look. Looking at the mother parasol tree's gloating expression, Lung Ruoxue knew that this bored plant-level ancestor had used his divine sense to investigate the Lung family again. Every time he encountered something fun, the other party would be eager to share it with her. Since Senior wants to see it, let's go and take a look. Lung Ruoxue did not have to guess to know what the mother parasol tree was referring to. Seeing how eager she was to try, she did not object to it. After that, the two of them walked towards the guest courtyard. At this moment, the guest courtyard was filled with people. There were representatives from various major forces who were here to watch the show. And there were also people involved. They were the representatives from the forces who had yet to sign the employment contract with Lung Ruoxue, and had been invited out of the Lung family's guest courtyard by Lung Xiaoqing. Those people had already surrounded the Lung clan's members, led by Lung Xiaoqing, and were strongly demanding that the Lung clan give them an explanation. On what basis were they being asked to leave the Lung clan's guest courtyard? They didn't want to leave. Although the Lung family didn't ask them to leave the city was safer than the Lung family. They were also treated to good food and drink, so they were even more unwilling to leave. Chapter 2632. Scheme 2. Lung family's ancestor, we respect you as our senior, but you can't rely on the Lung family's power to look down on small forces like us, right? All the forces on the Haotian continent have always followed the Lung family's lead. If it weren't for us, the small and medium-sized forces, who supported the Lung family so much, how could the Lung family have such a high status on the Haotian continent? But now your Lung clan's actions have really disappointed us. A middle-aged man criticized in an unusually agitated manner. He was so angry that his face and neck turned red. His words naturally received the support of many small factions. Because this person had said something that none of them dared to say. Lung Xiaoqing was so angry that the veins on his forehead were throbbing. He was a little regretful that he had been too polite to them before. These people had thought that the Lung family would not dare to drive them away because of their pride. Now the Lung family was accused of bullying others. If it were not for the fact that the Lung family was about to leave the Haotian continent, it would take a lot more effort for the Lung family to recover their former reputation. But now he really didn't care. They were about to retort. But before Lung Xiaoqing could say anything, an icy cold female voice rang in their ears. What's wrong with using your power to bully others? Don't you need the capital to bully others? Lung Ruoxue walked over leisurely. The people on both sides who were watching the show couldn't help but make way for her. When he saw Lung Ruoxue, Lung Xiaoqing heaved a huge sigh of relief. By the time she finished speaking, Lung Ruoxue had already walked to the front of the middle-aged man and continued to ask, "Do you think him right?" This. The middle-aged man who had been very brave when he was facing Lung Xiaoqing earlier suddenly felt the pressure on his body increase. He stuttered and could not speak. Seeing his reaction, Lung Ruoxue sneered. "After seeing you today, I finally understand why it's easier to invite a god than to send him away. We've already finished our discussion, but you're still staying in the Lung family. Do you want the Lung family to support you? Or do you want to join the Lung family and become its subsidiary?" With that, Lung Ruoxue did not give the middle-aged man and the rest a chance to speak. She turned to Lung Xiaoqing and asked, "Does the Lung family still accept affiliated families?" "I won't accept it," Lung Xiaoqing replied without even thinking. At the same time, she could not help but chuckle to herself. This girl was really something. With just a few words, The guy who was making a lot of noise just now had run out of battery. Woo. When he compared the two, he suddenly felt that he was too useless. He couldn't even handle such a small matter. He felt very inferior. Did you guys hear that? The Lung family is not accepting any affiliated families now, so please leave the Lung family as soon as possible. Of course, if you don't want to leave, you can also stay in the inn in the Aohan city and pay for your own expenses. Lung Ruoxua had made her words very clear. When the crowd heard her words, their faces turned even uglier. In fact, those people knew it was time to leave, but most of the small and medium-sized forces had brought many clansmen and subordinates to the proud cold city, and they were all elites of their forces. On the surface, those people wanted to be safe, but in fact they wanted to stay in the Lung family to preserve their strength so that they would not be completely annihilated when they were attacked by Sun Tao. According to their thinking, since a super force like the Lung family had invited them here, they would not easily drive away the guests. As such, even though the discussion was almost over, they still had no intention of leaving. However, it seemed that these people had miscalculated. The original Lung family might not have chased these people away for the sake of their reputation. But Lung Ruoxua did not care about that. In her eyes, since these people were not considered her clients, they naturally did not have the right to stay in the Lung family after the matter was settled. They would also be served by the Lung family with good food and drink. If they wanted to treat the Lung family as a safe haven, they would have to see if he agreed. With her in the Lung family, it was impossible to support these idlers. Thanks, why are they allowed to stay here? The middle-aged man, who had finally managed to adjust his state of mind, pointed at the other factions who were watching the show when he heard Lung Ruoxua's direct order to leave. When the other forces saw that the other party wanted to drag them into the water, they couldn't help but hate the middle-aged man. Many people even cursed in their hearts. This is obviously your business, and the Lung family didn't drive them away, so why are you still holding on to them? They're my clients, so they don't have to leave. Of course, if you become my customers, you don't need to leave. However, you are not. So please leave quickly. Lung Ruoxua said coldly. Can you not be so realistic? Are you going to drive us away if we don't become your customers? When the middle-aged man heard this, he immediately became excited and shouted. He felt that he had gotten hold of something that could be used against Lung Ruoxua. If such words were heard by the powers who were in the same boat as him, it would definitely resonate with them. This way, everyone would be even more united. Moreover, the middle-aged man believed that no one would not care about their reputation, and would not care about being criticized in public. It was a pity that even though his idea was good, he had met Lung Ruoxua. Lung Ruoxua wasn't one of those sanctimonious fellows. To her, reputation wasn't a big deal. She didn't care about other people's opinions, and only wanted to follow her heart and do things her way. It had to be said that there were many people who wanted to do this. However, not everyone had the confidence and ability that Lung Ruoxua had. Thus, Lung Ruoxua's casual actions would naturally be criticized by many people. However, she did not care. What's wrong with reality? Could it be that I'm kind by taking care of you people even though you're not my customers? May I ask what my kindness can be exchanged for? Lung Ruoxua smiled faintly and asked with a face full of doubt. You can earn our respect. The middle-aged man thought for a moment and quickly said in a righteous manner. Hee. I've always heard that only the strong are respected in this world. I didn't expect to hear another version today, where kindness is respected. Let me ask you, if I'm a complete mess of kindness and my strength is 0, I wonder what kind of treatment I'll receive. Lung Ruoxua continued to ask curiously. This? The middle-aged man was speechless again. What, you can't say it? Since you're speechless, then don't talk about kindness anymore. Kindness also depends on who you're being kind to. If I'm kind to people like you who refuse to leave, wouldn't I be asking for trouble? Lung Ruoxua laughed coldly. Men. Send the guests out. Whoever refuses to leave, beat them out. Following that, Lung Ruoxua turned around and instructed the Lung family's guards. All the guards quickly responded. And then they all put on a stern face, looking at the middle-aged man and the others with a fierce look. The guards truly felt that Lung Ruoxua's words were more imposing. Now the other party didn't even dare to say a word. Many people were so scared that they were like chicks that had just come out of their shells, and their bodies began to tremble. Satisfying. It was really satisfying. When they thought of the domineering aura that Lung Ruoxua had exuded, the Lung family's guards all puffed out their chests like roosters who had just won a battle. They felt that they must not weaken Lung Ruoxia's killing god aura. Otherwise it would be too embarrassing. Chapter 2633. Scheme 3. With this thought in mind, the guards would no longer be polite to those who refused to leave. As such, those people were a little afraid, and all looked at the middle-aged man in unison. The middle-aged man was helpless and could only bite the bullet and say, "Wait. Wait a minute. We didn't say we wouldn't hire you. It's such a big matter. Can you give us a few days to think about it? All right, I'll give you 3 days. After 3 days, those who haven't signed a contract with me, please leave the Lung family. Otherwise, I'll send people to chase you away. It won't look good then." Lung Ruoxia's previous coldness was gone as she smiled. After she finished speaking, she turned around and left, just like how she had come. The moment Lung Ruoxua left, most of the people present heaved a sigh of relief. Some of them were already drenched in cold sweat, and their clothes were mostly wet. It was clear how much pressure Lung Ruoxua had put on them. Back at the snow garden, the mother parasol tree could not help but ask curiously, "Schwer, why are you giving them 3 days? After 3 days, some people might not be willing to pay you so much to hire you." "I know. I gave them 3 days to make them think it through. After all, my goal is for all forces to agree to my conditions, not to be like a bull, exhausted to the point of setting up a defensive array for them." Lung Ruoxua laughed evilly. I hope you can succeed." The mother parasol tree was not optimistic about the remaining forces. It should be known that most of the forces that had not signed a contract with Schwer were greedy, selfish and petty. It was good enough that they did not want to take advantage of the situation. How could they be willing to share half of their assets with others? Wouldn't that be the same as taking their lives? Lung Ruoxua smiled but did not say anything. 3 days passed by in a flash. Lung Xiaoqing came to see Lung Ruoxua with joy on his face and went straight to the point. "Schwer, among the remaining forces, a small number of them have signed contracts with us. Those who have not signed contracts have also left the Lung family. Your words are more powerful." Lung Xiaoqing admired Lung Ruoxua a lot. When it was time to be ruthless, she was more ruthless than anyone else. When it was time to be gentle, she was equally irresistible. However, not everyone had the right to see this little girl's tender side. At least, he had never seen it before. Now, when Lung Ruoxua faced the Lung family, she still had a faint and distant expression on her face. He was rather helpless about this. "You didn't leave the city?" Lung Ruoxua asked indifferently. "No. It's strange. Those forces are staying in the inn in the Aohan city. Don't they want to go back to their original forces?" Lung Xiaoqing asked with a puzzled look. "Are those guys really thinking of using this place as a safe haven?" "Before we leave the Haotian continent, the Lung family will have a chance to make a fortune. Don't be shy about charging them, because they will need a lot of money in the divine world." Lung Ruoxua reminded him with a faint smile. "Don't worry, I won't let go of the chance to slaughter a fat sheep." Lung Xiaoqing laughed with a tacit understanding. "All right, there's one more thing. Those forces that have signed a contract with us are asking me when I'm going to set up a defensive formation for them." Lung Xiaoqing added after some thought. "Tell them to calm down. I will arrange this." Lung Ruoxua nodded. "I think some forces can't wait any longer." Lung Xiaoqing reminded with a faint smile. "We'll still have to let them wait. I only signed a contract with them and didn't take their money. What are they rushing me for?" Lung Ruoxua was a little unhappy. It was really hard to earn money these days. However, she wouldn't pamper her client. She had the initiative. "I think those people think that since you've signed a contract with them, you have an obligation to ensure their safety. Otherwise, why would they be willing to pay you half of their assets so easily?" At this moment, the mother parasol tree, who had been silent all this while, said with a smirk, "I only signed a contract of intent with them. It means that they're willing to pay half of their assets to hire me. As for when I'll take action, it's up to me. Moreover, I won't charge them a single cent if I don't finish my work. So in fact our employment relationship is not really established. Lung Ruoxue explained. If those forces were to know what you said, they would most likely think that you are toying with them. The mother parasol tree broke out in cold sweat and could not help but ask. I'm not playing with them. I just want to use a more convenient way to achieve my goal. Lung Ruoxue said lightly. If the parasol tree and Lung Xiaoqing still did not understand, then they would be really stupid. Hence, the two of them could not help but shed tears of sympathy for those who had fallen into Shui-er's trap. Thanks at the same time, they rejoiced that Shui-er was not scheming against them, or else they would have been depressed to death. In the next few days, a piece of news spread to the city of Prideful Frost. All of a sudden, the people in the city were in a panic. Especially those forces that were related to the news. They were so scared that their faces turned as pale as paper. This was because the news said that the faction they were in had been attacked by Sun Tao and no longer existed. This news was too shocking. Although only a few of the small and medium-sized forces were attacked, Sun Tao and the others had not made a move for a long time. Now that they had made a move again, the meaning was self-evident. When the various factions found out about this news, they were like ants on a hot pan. They were so anxious that they were going in circles. Some people even strongly requested that Lung Ruoxue immediately set up an array formation for their factions. Although most of the factions had such thoughts, the people in charge of some of the major factions were still calm. They knew that they had to remain calm at times like this. They couldn't force Lung Ruoxue because of such a matter. Otherwise, if she were to shirk her responsibilities in a fit of anger, wouldn't they be the ones to suffer? It could be said that it was because of their calmness that Lung Ruoxue was satisfied with their performance and had summoned them in private. When the representatives of the top forces saw that they weren't the only ones invited by Lung Ruoxue, they couldn't help but feel puzzled. However, they were smart enough not to say anything and patiently waited for Lung Ruoxue to speak first. Lung Ruoxue knew that even though the few of them looked calm on the surface, they must be very surprised that she had asked them to come. Thus, she did not beat around the bush and said directly, "I've called you here in private to discuss something. May I know why you're looking for us?" A representative of a top force couldn't help but ask, "I want to ask you about your plans for the future." Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. The few of them did not understand and all of them looked at Lung Ruoxue, waiting for her to continue. "Do you want to hide in your own territory, or do you want to become a super force on the Haotian continent?" Lung Ruoxue asked casually as if her words were as simple as asking what they were having for dinner. However, the expressions of the representatives of the top forces changed drastically when they heard this. Was Lung Ruoxue testing them? Were they afraid that they would fight with the Lung family or the Luo family? In fact, it was almost every force's biggest dream to become a recognized superfamily. However, to become a superfamily, it was not just about having money, power, and territory. It also required a certain foundation and enough reserve talents. A superfamily like the Lung family had to have at least operated on the Haotian continent for thousands of years before it could reach its current scale and become a superfamily on the Haotian continent. However, the Luo family was a special case, who asked the Luo family to have a powerful master with a strong background that no one else could compare to. Then there was the Lan family, which, like the Lung family, had at least a few thousand years of history. None of the top forces present could compare to these three families. Hence, when they heard Lung Ruoxue's words, they sensitively felt that Lung Ruoxue thought that they were ambitious and wanted to take advantage of the chaos to fight with these three families. Sop. They were really wronged. The Haotian continent's situation was so bad now. It was not easy to keep his family from being incorporated by Sun Tao, so he did not dare to think about such nonsense. Moreover, with the existence of Sun Tao and the others, the three great families seemed to exist in name only. These three superfamilies with deep roots and strong backings had all been forced to hide in their own territory by Sun Tao. The Luo family had even lost Luo City. Compared to these three families, they were even less presentable. At that moment, the representative of the top forces who thought of this immediately expressed his thoughts to Lung Ruoxue. Senior Lung, please rest assured. The Lung family, Luo family, and Lan family will forever be the three great families in our hearts. No one can replace their positions. We will not acknowledge anyone else, including Sun Tao and the others. You really don't want to do it at all. Lung Ruoxue listened to their confession and said helplessly. These people seem to have misunderstood her words. I don't. The representatives of the top forces shouted in unison. What if I say that the Lung and Luo families are leaving? Lung Ruoxue exposed. What? At this moment, the representatives of the top forces were all stunned. They did not understand what Lung Ruoxue meant. What did he mean by leaving? Where to? When Sun Tao's matter is settled, I will take the Lung family and the Luo family out of the Haotian continent and head to the Divine Realm. By then, the Lan family will be the only super force left on the Haotian continent. Do you understand what I mean? Lung Ruoxue smiled. Chapter 2634. This is fake. 1. They heard Lung Ruoxue's words clearly, but they still didn't understand what the other party meant. Does Senior mean that you want us to replace the Lung and Luo families? After the representatives of the top forces looked at each other, one of them asked on behalf of the others. That's right. I selected you from all the top forces. The forces you belong to are the strongest among all the top forces on the Haotian continent. That's why I'm willing to tell you my future arrangements in advance. When Sun Tao's matter is over, I'll take the Lung family and the Luo family and leave Haotian continent. At that time, the Lan family will be the only dominant family in Haotian continent. This also means that your chance has come, doesn't it? Lung Ruoxue smiled. Senior, you don't wish for the Lan family to monopolize the world? Hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, another person could not help but ask. Now that Lung Ruoxue's intentions had confused them, they could not figure out what she was trying to do. At the same time, he was afraid that he had expressed the wrong feelings, so he didn't dare to casually reveal his thoughts. He could only choose to ask clearly first. For me, it doesn't matter who is the most powerful in the Haotian continent. I don't care about that. What I'm concerned about is who the Lung and Luo families' territories will belong to after they leave. After Lung Ruoxue finished speaking calmly, she casually picked up the teacup on the table and took a sip of tea. Then, her beautiful eyes turned to the people opposite her. If you're interested in the Luo family, the Lung family and Wanshan City, I can make the decision to transfer these places to you. Of course, I won't be transferring them for free. You'd better understand this. After a pause, Lung Ruoxue continued. After she finished speaking, the representatives of the top forces finally understood Lung Ruoxue's words. The other party wanted to leave, but she didn't want the territory to go to someone else for no reason. Therefore, she wanted to sell the territory now. However, how much did the other party want to sell this territory for? Could they afford it? The most important thing was that after buying the land of these three families, they would still have to send people to guard this place. Putting aside how much money they would have to spend, if the land they bought was snatched by Sun Tao and the others, who would they cry to then? Thinking about it quickly, the representatives felt a headache. To be honest, the cold city of the Lung family was a good place. The spiritual qi was much richer than that of other cities. Luo City and Wanshan City were both equipped with defensive formations. As long as there were no traitors, their defenses could be considered impenetrable. The territories of these three cities naturally made many forces envious. It could be said that if Lung Ruoxue really left the Haotian continent with her subordinates and the Lung clan, these three territories would definitely become the focus of many forces. However, it was clear that she didn't want to let others take advantage of her territory, which was why she proposed to transfer it. It had to be said that the few people sitting here were very tempted by these three places, but being tempted didn't mean that they dared to buy them. They were even more afraid that they wouldn't be able to hold on to it after they bought it. After all, they didn't have the strength of the Lung family or a strong backing like Lung Ruoxue. In this way, these three treasured lands were of little value to them. However, none of them dared to tell Lung Ruoxue that the three areas were of little value. Otherwise, the person in front of them would definitely go berserk. Hence, after conversing with each other through voice transmission for a long time, a young man then spoke carefully on behalf of a few factions. Senior, we're very interested in the 3 places you've mentioned. But you've seen the situation in the Hautian continent. Even if we want to buy the 3 territories you've mentioned, we don't dare to make a move. You guys are worried about Sun Tao. Lung Ruoxue knew the answer. Thanks, the few of them nodded with shame. Sun Tao's return this time had shown them his strength, and they were all shocked. The other party was too strong. Even if they joined forces, they were not his opponent. This fact was enough to give them a heavy blow. Therefore, what else could they do other than choosing to hide in a corner? You want to hide from him forever? Lung Ruoxue asked again. What else can we do? We once thought about getting rid of them, but they were too strong. As soon as they came, they attacked the 3 superpowers first, catching all of us off guard. By the time we reacted, they had already conquered more than half of the territory of the Hautian continent. Even if we wanted to fight back, we couldn't do anything. Thus, we had no choice but to sweep away the snow in front of our own doors, each preserving our strength and shrinking back in our most important territories. If the Lung family didn't send a letter and Sun Tao and the others didn't take a break recently, we wouldn't have dared to walk around the Hautian continent. The young man said honestly, do you think that hiding in a hole is a long-term plan? Don't think that Sun Tao hasn't made a move on you guys yet. That's because he's already treated you guys like turtles in a jar. He thinks that he can take care of you guys at any time, so you guys aren't afraid of him. But you have to live in fear all day long. How long do you want to live like this? Until the day Sun Tao no longer has the patience to play hide-and-seek with you guys, and takes action to deal with you guys? Lung Ruoxue retorted with a face full of disappointment. As long as Senior sets up a formation in our territory, we'll be even safer. Someone said in a low voice. Do you really think you're safe with the formation? Have you forgotten the lesson from the Luo family? Let's put it this way. You might be able to stay in the territory for a year, 2 years, or even 10 years, or even 100 years, but what about 100 years later? Will your people be unable to stand this kind of life? There will be a day when the resources of your families run out. What will you do then? Lung Ruoxue reminded. We, the representatives of the top forces, were speechless after hearing Lung Ruoxue's words. How could they not know that the things Lung Ruoxue had mentioned would become a reality in the future? However, what could they do? Lung Ruoxue was not willing to help them get rid of Sun Tao. Get rid of Sun Tao? The few of them thought of this situation at the same time and hesitated. Finally, the young man opened his mouth and probed. Senior, can you help us get rid of Sun Tao? I've said it before. As long as all the forces in the Hautian continent hire me, I'll help you eliminate this hidden danger. Lung Ruoxue still said the same thing. When the few of them heard this, they were instantly disappointed. If they could get all the forces to hire Lung Ruoxue willingly, would they need to be so conflicted? It was precisely because they could not control the thoughts of other forces that they could only care about themselves. You guys don't have to be so dejected. Didn't Sun Tao attack a few other forces? I think this is a good opportunity for you. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. Senior wants us to hit them while they're down and take the opportunity to recruit them? The young man raised his head and looked at Lung Ruoxue. I'm not that kind of person. Lung Ruoxue pretended to be unhappy after hearing the young man's words. When the people present heard this, they quickly said, No, how could Senior be that kind of person? However, what they thought was completely different from what they said. In their hearts, Lung Ruoxue could not be considered kind. Chapter 2635. This is fake too. It's good that you know. I just wanted to remind you to do their job. Now is a good time. As long as they sign a contract with me, I'll take care of Sun Tao. Lung Ruoxue promised. Senior, Sun Tao has a lot of people around him. They're almost spread out across the entire Hautian continent. Can you really deal with him alone? The young man asked worriedly. In fact, this was what everyone present wanted to know. I've never put Sun Tao in my eyes. Lung Ruoxue was full of confidence. Since Senior is so confident, We'll definitely try our best to convince the powers that have yet to sign a contract with Senior. The young man promised. All right, I'll be waiting for your good news. Lung Ruoxue was very satisfied with the way the man in front of her was acting. She gave him a look that said he was a promising child. Senior, we'll take our leave first. The young man said as he stood up. He then turned around and left. Seeing this, the others immediately followed. After they left, the mother parasol tree appeared beside Lung Ruoxue silently and asked curiously, Schwer, do you think they'll be able to see through your intentions? So what if I can? If they really want their clan to become a super clan, they have no other choice. Lung Ruoxue said disapprovingly. Senior, we just need to wait and watch the show. Lung Ruoxue continued. Yes. The mother parasol tree nodded. Just as Lung Ruoxue had said, when the representatives of the top forces returned to their own lodgings and thought back on Lung Ruoxue's words, they could sense that Lung Ruoxue's intention was to get rid of Sun Tao. In order to replace the Lung family and the Luo family as a super family, they were willing to cooperate with Lung Ruoxue's idea. However, they thought that Lung Ruoxue's intention was most likely to earn money. Who would have thought that Lung Ruoxue's main reason was because she found it too troublesome and time-consuming to set up formations for their families? That was why she chose the method that she thought was the most convenient. In order for them to convince the various factions that had yet to sign a contract with her, Lung Ruoxue had racked her brains and put in a lot of effort. However, the results were not bad. At the very least, it was developing in the direction of the ending she had designed. Now, she just had to wait for those forces to take the initiative. It had to be said that the representatives of the top powers had the motivation to become a super family. They were extremely effective in their actions. In less than 2 days, they had managed to convince more than half of the powers to hire Lung Ruoxue. However, there were still a few representatives who were extremely stubborn. They would rather die than sign an employment contract with Lung Ruoxue. This fact made those few people particularly depressed. Seeing that things were developing in a good direction, some people refused to cooperate. Several representatives of the forces were so anxious that they were about to burst into flames. Unfortunately, no matter how they threatened and tempted, the other party refused to give in. What should he do now? The few of them gathered together and discussed for a long time. In the end, they decided that if it really didn't work, they could only. After gathering the stubborn representatives into a room in a certain inn, the young man among the representatives of the top forces spoke on behalf of them. We'll give you one last chance. Do you agree or not? I don't agree. We will never agree to it. What, do you want to silence me? You're all Lung Ruoxue's dogs. The middle-aged man, who once represented the forces that were expelled from the Lung clan's guest courtyard, shouted at the top of his voice. Help! Help me! Someone's trying to silence us. Then, the middle-aged man started to shout again. His voice was so miserable that it instantly attracted the attention of more than half of the customers in the inn. Thanks, the young man was very vexed, but before he could remedy the situation, the door of the guest room was knocked open, and a group of onlookers rushed in. What's going on? What's going on? The people who had barged into the room without permission asked all at once. Everyone, please don't misunderstand. We just have something to discuss with each other. The young man could only say, don't listen to his nonsense. We have nothing to talk about. They want to kill us. They're trying to kill us. The middle-aged man saw that there were many onlookers and quickly asked for help. Silence. This is the cold, arrogant city of the Lung family. You guys are too bold. Quickly inform the Lung clan. Someone in the crowd shouted. Then there was the sound of panicked footsteps. Guys, don't listen to their nonsense. We don't want to kill anyone. Seeing that the situation was out of control, the young man immediately said, one of you said that you wanted to silence us, and the other said that you didn't want to kill us. Who do you want us to believe? Seeing that the two sides had different statements, someone questioned. Of course they'll listen to us. We're the victims. The middle-aged man said anxiously. Why did you kill them? Their forces were destroyed by Sun Tao's men, and that's already pitiful enough. Someone asked the young man in confusion. Yup, that's right. Our forces have been destroyed, and now we're being bullied. Wu, they're forcing us to our deaths. Without giving the young man a chance to answer, the middle-aged man burst into tears. Seeing this scene, the young man and the others' faces darkened. This guy was really good at acting. Why didn't he look so sad when they talked about this? Why are they doing this to you? Someone in the crowd asked curiously. These few people are Lung Ruoxia's dogs. They came to force us to agree to hire Lung Ruoxia. We were unwilling, so they wanted to kill us. Sob. The Lung family is bullying us. Do they still want us to live? The middle-aged man howled as he spoke. His expression was so miserable that everyone present couldn't help but sympathize with him. Don't listen to their nonsense. We're only hoping that they'll agree to hire Senior Lung Ruoxia for the safety of the entire Haotian continent. You should know that only those few clans have not agreed to hire her. If they agree to this, Senior Lung will definitely get rid of Sun Tao and the others for us. By then we won't have to fear anyone, and can go back to our previous lives. Isn't that good? The young man said loudly to the crowd. Most of the onlookers were the representatives of the major forces. Therefore, after hearing the young man's words, they felt that it made sense. Naturally, they did not feel sorry for the middle-aged man and his group. Seeing that he had saved some of his losses, the young man struck while the iron was hot. Now just because they refused to hire Senior Lung, Sun Tao and the others are still running amok in the Haotian continent. And our people don't dare to go out and walk around freely. Do you want to live like this forever? I don't. Someone in the crowd shouted. So, do you think they should agree to this? The young man pointed at the middle-aged man, but his words were directed at the onlookers. You guys agree? This isn't just a matter of your clans, it also concerns our clansmen. Someone saw that the young man's words made sense, and tried to persuade the middle-aged man. Chapter 2636. This is fake 3. That's right. Your clansmen were all killed by Sun Tao. Don't you want to avenge your clansmen? Another young man chimed in. Whether we take revenge or not is our business. What does it have to do with you? The middle-aged man saw that the situation was a little one-sided, so he raised his head and said angrily, I did it for your own good. You really don't know what's good for you. The young man who had spoken before was a little angry when he saw his good intentions being treated like this. Don't tell me you really don't want to take revenge? A certain man looked at the middle-aged man with a suspicious look and asked, This is my family's business. It has nothing to do with you. The middle-aged man was so angry that his face turned green, and he continued to shout at the top of his lungs. Hee. Of course, it has nothing to do with us. At this moment, Lung Ruoxia's smiling voice could be heard. The crowd at the entrance subconsciously made way for her. The moment the middle-aged man saw Lung Ruoxia, his voice instantly raised by a few octaves. Lung Ruoxia, you still dare to appear? Quickly take your dogs and leave this place. We don't need you to avenge our family. Then who do you want to help you? Or do you think that your clansmen are still alive? Lung Ruoxia said with a smile. Aye. The middle-aged man was at a loss for words when he saw Lung Ruoxia. After being questioned by Lung Ruoxia, the courage he had when he shouted at her earlier had disappeared without a trace. Following that, Lung Ruoxia's beautiful eyes turned to the other people on the middle-aged man's side. She smiled and asked, Do you all have the same thoughts as him? We want to take revenge. The other people looked at each other and whispered. Hearing this, the middle-aged man turned his head and shouted at the few people. How could you betray me? Didn't we agree that we'll think of a solution together? There's no need for Lung Ruoxia to interfere. But I'm afraid she's the only one on the Haotian continent who can help us. The few of them lowered their heads and did not dare to look at the middle-aged man. Back then, they had agreed that they would all follow the lead of the middle-aged man's faction. However, that was under the premise that their clan had not been destroyed by Sun Tao. Now that their clan was no longer around, if they still did not avenge their clan members, how could they face the clan members who had died? You're right. Other than me, no one else can help you. Lung Ruoxia noticed that they were going against each other, so she made her presence known. Instantly, the middle-aged man's anger rose again. Who said she's the only one who can help you? Don't be fooled by her. She won't help you for free. This woman is very black-hearted. His anger caused the middle-aged man to forget his fear of Lung Ruoxue once again. His face was red as he roared. From what you're saying, you want me to do good things for free? Lung Ruoxue replied calmly. Pfft. Someone in the crowd laughed. Then there was another burst of laughter. In a world where the strong were respected, how could there be a strong person who would help others for free? Such a person could not be called a strong person, but a savior. Moreover, for cultivators, being too kind usually didn't make them live long. This was because wherever there were cultivators, it was full of fierce competition and cruelty. In such a world, only those with a heart like a rock and a firm will could go further and stand at the top of the many cultivators. Seeing that the middle-aged man did not speak, Lung Ruoxue took out a white memory crystal and threw it into the air. Following that, an image appeared on the memory crystal. It was a scene that people couldn't bear to look at directly. It was the news that had been spreading like wildfire. As the video was played, the faces of the middle-aged man and the people around him all turned pale. The broadcast of this video confirmed the authenticity of the news. Before the clip could finish, the few people beside the middle-aged man could not control their tears and knelt in front of Lung Ruoxue, begging her to take revenge for their family. At this moment, let alone giving up 50% of their assets, even if they were asked to give up all their assets, they would be willing to do so. Although they had heard the news before, they had been skeptical. Now they no longer had any doubts. Instead, the thought of getting rid of Sun Tao and the others had become the most urgent thing in their hearts. When Lung Ruoxue heard their request, she immediately gave the young man a look. Following which the young man took out a few contracts. The few of them did not even think and immediately signed on the contracts. In just a few minutes, except for the middle-aged man, everyone on his side had made their choice. In the end, Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes turned to the middle-aged man, waiting for him to make a decision. After a long time, the petrified middle-aged man finally had some reaction. He mumbled, "No. This was impossible. This is impossible. Why is it impossible?" Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. "Thanks, this is fake. This video is fake." The middle-aged man was jolted awake. He pointed at Lung Ruoxue and glared at her. "This isn't fake." Lung Ruoxue promised seriously. "Fake. It must be fake. Sun Tao would never kill my clansmen." The middle-aged man said with certainty. "Why not?" Lung Ruoxue was very curious. When everyone was asked this question by Lung Ruoxue, their curiosity was piqued. "It's impossible," the middle-aged man said firmly. "What you're saying doesn't make sense. Could it be that Sun Tao is your relative, so he can't kill your family members?" Lung Ruoxue guessed with a smile. "How could he be my relative? Don't spout nonsense." Hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, the middle-aged man was so frightened that his heart was in a mess, but he quickly denied it. "Weren't you the one who kept emphasizing that Sun Tao couldn't have killed your family? Then what was going on in the image? This was clearly done by Sun Tao's men. You can't possibly not recognize the clothes of Sun Tao and his men, right?" Lung Ruoxue said as she looked at the video that was still playing. "Of course I recognize their clothes, but the people in your image are definitely not them. They would never kill my clansmen." The middle-aged man was very certain. "They're the ones who did it." Lung Ruoxue said calmly. "No. It wasn't he. Sun Tao wouldn't do that. I've already submitted to them, so what reason do they have to send people to kill my clansmen?" In a moment of desperation, the middle-aged man retorted, but as soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly realized what he had just said and quickly changed his words. "I'm just talking nonsense, don't take it seriously." When everyone heard this, they looked at the middle-aged man in disdain. So what if this guy took them for fools? The words came from his own mouth, and he actually asked them not to take it seriously? If they didn't take it seriously, did they think he was joking? Wouldn't they be the silly ones if they did that? Now you know why he stopped you from hiring me, right? Lung Ruoxue ignored the middle-aged man who was filled with regret and frustration. Instead, she turned around and spoke to the other representatives who had been wearing the same pants as the middle-aged man. When the representatives heard this, they felt so regretful that their intestines turned green. They had thought that the middle-aged man was doing this for their own good. Only now did they realize that the other party was simply using them. This result infuriated them. In the next second, they all rushed toward the middle-aged man and started punching and kicking him. When Lung Ruoxue saw this, she immediately turned around and left. After returning to the snow garden, the mother parasol tree immediately came over and said, "Little girl, your wish has finally come true. Okay, next we should prepare to deal with Sun Tao." Lung Ruoxue smiled. By the way, did Sun Tao really exterminate all those forces? The mother parasol tree recalled this and asked curiously. "You'll have to ask him." Lung Ruoxue pointed at Lung Xiaoxiao, who was walking into the snow garden. The mother parasol tree then turned its beautiful eyes to Lung Xiaoxiao. Lung Xiaoxiao immediately felt the pressure increase. Being stared at by such a beautiful woman with anticipation, he did not feel a trace of joy in his heart. Instead, he felt a little scared. However, he did not dare to hide, so he could only brace himself and say, "Senior, is there anything you need to ask me?" "Yes, I want to know if the rumored forces are all gone." The mother parasol tree raised its head and asked Lung Xiaoxiao. Upon hearing this, Lung Xiaoxiao's forehead was instantly covered in cold sweat. He looked at Lung Ruoxue and saw that she did not have any intention of stopping him from speaking. He then told the mother parasol tree truthfully, "Other than the middle-aged man's faction, the others are still there. So you're saying that you're lying to them?" The mother parasol tree looked at Lung Ruoxue and said, "This isn't lying. This is strategy." Lung Ruoxue said helplessly, "Actually, I think you're still doing something unnecessary. Why do you have to go through so much trouble? Those who aren't willing to hire you will be directly killed. Wouldn't that save more time and effort?" The mother parasol tree could not help but suggest, "Senior, I'm a kind-hearted person. Please don't teach the child the wrong things." Lung Ruoxue's forehead was filled with black lines when she heard this. Lung Xiaoxiao also felt that the mother parasol tree's words were a little. He was speechless about this. However, Lung Ruoxue's words were clearly despised by the mother parasol tree. The mother parasol tree rolled its eyes at her and said, "You're kind? Hehe. I have no comment on your kindness." All right. Lung Ruoxue admitted that she wasn't kind enough, but she was definitely not someone who liked to use violence. Basically, she felt that she was a peace-loving person, but the prerequisite was that no one offended her. Otherwise, she would immediately transform into a female T-Rex, and at that time, no one would be the one to suffer. Just as Lung Ruoxue was about to defend herself, a voice rang out in her heart. "Master, we're here." Chapter 2637. Who are they? 1. Hearing this, Lung Ruoxue revealed a faint smile. When the parasol tree mother saw this, it could not help but ask curiously, "What's the matter? Is there a good thing? May and the others are here." Lung Ruoxue smiled. "I see." The parasol tree nodded in understanding, but Lung Xiaoxiao was not sure who the May that Lung Ruoxue was referring to was. He asked curiously, "Who are May and the others?" "It's a few of my beastie and my subordinates from Wanshan City." Lung Ruoxue explained simply. Ever since she had arrived at the Azure Dragon Mountain and settled down there temporarily, she had sent a voice transmission to May and a few other small beasts, asking them to bring Big Mountain and his son to the Wanshan City to find the head butler, then bring them to the proud Cold City. Now they could finally meet up. Lung Ruoxue was looking forward to the arrival of May and the other small beasts, and the people of Wanshan City. After not seeing him for so long, she realized that she missed those guys from Wanshan City. At the same time, she felt that she was really an irresponsible master. Ever since she took over Wanshan City, she seemed to have been a hands-off manager. However, in some ways, she did it for the good of the people of Wanshan City. After all, she had always thought that she was just a passerby in the Hautian continent. At that time, she had no intention of taking them away from here. But now everything was different, because she would take those people to the divine world. As the master, she naturally had to give them a stable living environment. After some thought, Lung Ruoxue raised her head and looked at Lung Xiaoxiao. She requested very politely, Please arrange a place for my subordinates to stay. I think there will be a lot of them. All right, he said. Leng Xiaoxiao nodded his head delightedly. Then he resigned himself to his fate and went to work for Leng Ruoxue. Leng Ruoxue and the mother parasol tree were waiting for the Mei and the other little beasts to arrive. At this time, the succubus and the other beasts, as well as the people from Wanshan City, were already approaching the proud cold city. Looking at the city gate in front of him, Baby was excited. Sob. I'm going to see my bad master. It missed its master so much. Originally, their master had left them for the Azure Dragon Mountain and said that they would be back soon. Who knew that this separation would last for several months? Moreover, they could not go directly to the Azure Dragon Mountain to meet their master. Instead, they went to the even further Wanshan City. One could imagine all the hardships they had to endure on the way. The abnormally excited Baby jumped down from the feather's back and ran straight for the city gate. The head butler of the Wanshan City, who was also sitting on the feather's back, couldn't stop him even if he shouted. The mimicked Baby turned into a stream of light and quickly ran towards the city gate. At the city gate, the petite Baby was still stopped by someone. The person who stopped it was none other than Leng Yichun, who was punished by the Leng family's grand elder, Leng Xiaoqing, to guard the city gate. Because Leng Yichun was punished, he was in a terrible mood. Hence, when he saw the little fox who wanted to enter the city without following the rules, the anger in his heart immediately rose. Thanks, what he was thinking was, it was fine if he was bullied by Leng Ruoxue, but now, even this little fox didn't care about him. He really couldn't tolerate this. With this thought, Leng Yichun immediately shouted at the little fox in front of him. Where did this little bastard come from? Aohan City isn't a place that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can enter. When Baby heard this, he squinted his eyes and said with a smile that was not a smile. What did you just say? Do you have the guts to say that again? What's wrong with saying it again? Did you see that? This is the proud cold city, not a place that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can enter. Little bastard, get lost. Don't let me see you again. Leng Yichun's mouth twitched as he spoke arrogantly. You bastard. You're the little beast. This grandpa isn't some random cat or dog. Open your blind eyes and let this grandpa see clearly. Baby Fire roared. It was in a hurry to see its lovely master, and didn't have time to waste on irrelevant people. So the man in front of it didn't understand, which made it very angry. If it wasn't for the fact that this was the proud cold city, the territory of the Leng family, it would have attacked long ago. You dare to scold me? Baby's words caused Leng Yichun's anger to rise by a few notches. He couldn't understand what was going on in this world. Why did everyone dare to bully him? In the past, although he could not be considered to be able to call the wind and summon the rain in the Leng family, he had a great reputation in the Leng family. But now, I'm sorry, we're in a hurry to enter the city. At this moment, the head butler, who had arrived at the entrance of the city of Prideful Frost, picked up the Baby and looked at Leng Yichun apologetically. This is your fox. Leng Yichun glanced at the head butler of the Wanshan City and thought to himself, I've finally found the owner of this little fox. I guess that this fox couldn't be without an owner. No, it's my master S. The head butler of the Wanshan City said very honestly. Although he did not know the identity of the man who blocked the treasure, he could tell from his clothes that he was not an ordinary member of the Leng clan. Therefore, his words were quite polite, which could be considered as giving the Leng clan enough face. Where's your master? Let him out. What kind of beast is he raising? You don't even know the rules. Leng Yichun shouted at the top of his voice. My master is in the city. Baby didn't want to be outdone and roared back. Then he turned his head and glared at the head butler of the Wanshan City. He was quite dissatisfied with his initiative to show weakness. From its point of view, there was no need for them to give the Leng family any face. Anyway, Master was not very satisfied with the Leng family. However, the head butler of Wanshan City did not dare to act willfully like his precious treasure. He felt that his master's surname was Leng, and no matter how thin the relationship between his master and the Leng family was, in the eyes of outsiders, his master was still a member of the Leng family. If he embarrassed the Leng family in public, Wouldn't that be equivalent to slapping his master's face? Therefore, as long as the Lung family didn't go too far, he was still willing to give the Lung family some face. With this thought in mind, he very much hoped that the Lung family in front of him would be able to see the light, so that both sides would not have a bad expression. However, Lung Yichun had obviously been oppressed to the point of suffocation recently, so he could not understand the good intentions of the head butler of Wanshan City. He did not even ask for the other party's name and directly said to the head butler, "Even if your master is in the city, he has to come out." As soon as these words came out, the face of the head butler of Wanshan City immediately turned black. The faces of the people of Wanshan City behind him also turned ugly. Some of them were even rubbing their fists and rubbing their palms, looking eager to try. Although Lung Yichun was sometimes a little out of line and couldn't see the truth clearly, his intuition wasn't bad, so he immediately felt that the atmosphere was unusual. The strong smell of gunpowder made him subconsciously take a big step back, and after he stood in the middle of the guards, he then asked with a face of vigilance, "What do you want? This is the city of Prideful Frost. If you dare to cause trouble here, you'll regret it." It would have been better if he had not said those words. The moment he said those words, the people of Wanshan City became even angrier. The other party's words clearly showed that he wanted to use his power to bully others. Ever since Wanshan City had Lung Ruoxue as their backer, everyone in the Haotian continent had to look up to them. It had been a long time since they had received such treatment. Now they had finally tasted the feeling of being despised again. Although it was not a fresh feeling, it was still rare. Chapter 2638. Who are they? 2. Everyone from the Wanshan City turned to look at their chief steward, using their eyes to ask him what to do, whether to make a move or not. Although the head butler was also very angry, he was more troubled. As the actual person in charge of the Wanshan City, he had too many factors to consider. In addition, his master was currently living in the Lung family. If they fought with the Lung family outside the city before they met his master, would his master blame them? Regret? You bastard. I'll let you know what regret is. Just as the head butler was thinking, Baby, who could not bear it any longer, was the first to attack. It did not care so much. Whoever made it unhappy, it would not let them off easily. Hence, its first target was Lung Yichun. The treasure's speed was too fast and Lung Yichun had no time to react before a claw mark appeared on his body. Seeing that he was injured, he did not even think and immediately ordered the guards, "Quickly catch this fox. I want to teach it a lesson." The guards obeyed and all stretched out their hands to grab the treasure. The people of Wanshan City saw this and naturally could not watch them bully their master's little beast. So without even asking for the chief steward's opinion, they swarmed forward and surrounded the guards. In an instant, the scene became even more chaotic. The two sides were in a chaotic battle. Wanshan City had the absolute advantage in numbers. On top of that, there were also Precious and other small beasts who took the opportunity to launch sneak attacks. Very quickly, the guards of the proud cold city were completely defeated. Lung Yichun's body was also covered in wounds. His face was blue and purple, and he looked extremely miserable. This scene happened in just a few minutes. By the time the head butler of Wanshan City reacted, the guards and Lung Yichun had already been surrounded and beaten into a miserable state. The chaotic battle ended without any suspense. They were so easily taken care of that all the guards felt ashamed. Although the other side had more people, it was a fact that they were too weak. Comparing the two sides, the other party was really too brutal. Woo. The guards' eyes were filled with tears as they looked pitifully at the baby who was sitting on Lung Yichun's body. Towards these people in front of them, they were already afraid. Where did this debt-collecting ghost come from? Could they be sent by the Sun family? With this thought in mind, a guard could not help but ask. When Baby heard this question, he crossed his legs and stretched out his little paws, shaking them gently. "We're not from the Sun family." "Then who are you? Why did you come to the proud cold city to cause trouble?" The guard captain said with a face full of grief and indignation. "Don't you think it's a little too late to ask who we are? Besides, we didn't come here to cause trouble. It was this guy who came to find trouble first." Baby pointed at Lung Yichun, who was already in a half-conscious state. Young Master Kun just didn't let you enter the city. The captain of the guard said in a low voice. Wrong. Not only did he not let me enter the city, he even called me an animal. I can't stand this. Baby said angrily. But you also beat us up. What else do you want? The expression on the captain's face became more and more sorrowful, but the situation was pressing, and he really didn't know what to do. He could only think of a way to stall for time. As for what happened at the city gate, he had just sent a message back to the Lung family. He believed that someone would come to solve it soon. Sob. Thanks, I don't want anything. I think someone from the Lung clan who has the final say will soon come. Baby said. When the captain of the guards heard this, he was shocked. He couldn't help but think to himself, how did this little fox know? Could it be that the other party could read minds? He let his imagination run wild. However, his baby really didn't know how to read minds. Otherwise, his baby would definitely tell him that if he beat the young, the old would come. If he beat the weak, the strong would come. Wasn't this the rule of most situations? It had already seen it many times. Not only that, but the captain's face also clearly said, we have a backer. And that backing would definitely arrive soon. Just like that, the Lung family's guards were scared witless. They looked at Baby and the others cautiously, afraid that they would feel that they had not had enough and would fight with them again. Baby, on the other hand, sat leisurely on Lung Yichun's back with her legs crossed. Her beautiful silver eyes were fixed on the direction of the city. A moment later, two figures rushed out of the city. The two men first looked at their guards, who had been beaten black and blue, and then turned their eyes to the little purple fox. Forefather, save me. Wu. Lung Yichun, who was in a semi-conscious state, saw Lung Xiaoqing's figure from the corner of his eyes and hurriedly called for help. However, Lung Xiaoqing ignored him and said to Bao Bei, you're a treasure? Not bad. It seems that you recognize me. Not like this guy with no vision. Baby pointed at Lung Yichun and said with a look of disdain. Lung Xiaoqing did not know how to respond to this. In fact, after he found out that Lung Ruoxia's beastie was coming to the proud cold city, he was afraid that it would cause more trouble, so he had specially asked Lung Ruoxia about it. He had originally planned to inform the city guards, but he did not expect them to arrive so quickly. Now there was nothing to say, because his own guards had already been beaten up. The situation in front of her made Lung Xiaoqing sigh in her heart. What she was afraid of really happened. He was clearly afraid that a conflict would occur between the two sides, but it still happened. Why couldn't anyone from both sides restrain themselves? However, he was even angrier at the people on his side. There were so many people on the other side, and they dared to start a conflict with the other side without asking clearly. How stupid was this behavior? Needless to say, the main culprit was definitely Lung Yichun, that idiot. At this moment, Lung Xiaoqing was filled with regret. Why did he have to punish Lung Yichun to guard the city gates? Miscalculated. It was definitely a mistake. He really regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. Moreover, the little beastie in front of him looked like an unforgiving master. How should he deal with the aftermath now? Lung Xiaoqing's head was starting to hurt from thinking about it. Unable to come up with any good ideas, he glanced at Lung Xiaoxiao beside him and gave him a look. Lung Xiaoxiao had no choice but to bite the bullet and said to Bao Bei with a smile, treasure, come with us to the Lung family's main residence. Your master is still waiting for you. She's been looking forward to your arrival. I'll definitely go. However, you have to first settle the matter at hand for me. Baby said with a face that left no room for discussion. Don't worry, we'll definitely give you an explanation. Lung Xiaoxiao guaranteed. However, he was thinking in his heart that at most he could just hand Lung Yichun over to the other party. In any case, from the looks of it now, other than causing trouble, that guy really didn't have much contribution to the family. I want an explanation now. I don't blame him for not letting me enter the city. After all, I was anxious to see Master, and didn't think so much before barging in. It's my fault. Baby first admitted his mistake with a good attitude, then changed the topic and said aggrievedly, but he shouldn't have called me an animal. So what if you humans are more noble than us beasts? Everyone was a cultivator, so they should be equal. More importantly, Master has never scolded us like this before, so what right does he have to do that? Chapter 2639. Who are they? 3. After Baby finished speaking in grievance, she was so angry that all the hair on her body stood up. Her beautiful silver eyes seemed to be burning with raging flames, and 2 small flames of anger flickered in her eyes. I'll get him to apologize to you, okay? Lung Xiaoxiao thought for a moment, and said when he heard his precious say that. Just an apology is definitely not enough. Baby was not very satisfied with this suggestion. If you have any other requests, just tell us. As long as it's within our capabilities, we will definitely satisfy you. Lung Xiaoxiao made up his mind. He has to compensate us for the emotional damage. Baby's eyes turned and he laughed evilly. A little fox who loved money so much was indeed Lung Ruoxia's beastie. It was simply carved out of the same mold as its master. Lung Xiaoxiao was surprised by the treasure's request, but he also felt that it was only natural. However, who do we have in this? Didn't he only scold you? Lung Xiaoxiao probed with uncertainty. I'm not the only beastie here. The word beast included all of us. Baby said matter-of-factly, but it was smart enough not to drag the Lung family guards into the water. After all, it was the one who started it first. When it's possible to forgive someone, one should forgive them. It would only target that idiot. What was this called? Oh, that's right, it was killing the chicken to warn the monkeys. It was still all right. When Lung Xiaoxiao heard this, she swept a glance from the corner of her eyes. There were only 5 little beasts present, which was not a large number. Lung Yichun should be able to afford it. Therefore, he quickly agreed to it. At the same time, he was glad that the little fox did not include the people from Wanshan City. Otherwise, Lung Yichun would have to pay off his debt for the rest of his life. However, what he didn't know was that even if there were only 5 little beasts who wanted compensation for mental damage, it would be enough for Lung Yichun to spend the rest of his life paying off his debts. Can we enter the city now? Lung Xiaoxiao, who felt that he had settled the few little beasts in front of him, asked again. Looking at Lung Yichun, who had fainted from anger after hearing that he had to pay for emotional damages, Baby finally nodded kindly. Then he glanced at the head butler of Wanshan City and said, "Head butler, let's enter the city." Yes. The head butler of Wanshan City nodded his head and heaved a long sigh of relief in his heart. The matter was finally resolved without any mishaps. He no longer had to be an invisible person. It was really good. However, Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao's attention was obviously focused on the few little beasts. In this regard, the head butler of Wanshan City was rather calm after being ignored. In his words, he wanted to keep a low profile, and it would be perfect if he was not noticed by others. He followed Lung Xiaoqing and his brother into the city of Prideful Frost, and then to the Lung family's main residence. The head butler and the others were led directly to the accommodation that was arranged for them by the Lung family's butler, while the treasures and the other beasts went to the falling snow garden. The 5 little beasts, who had not seen their master for a long time, were so excited when they saw Lung Ruoxia that they could not control themselves. They all pounced towards Lung Ruoxia enthusiastically. Lung Ruoxia hugged this and touched that, playing around with the little beasts. Suddenly, a curious voice rang in their ears. Who are they? The golden eagle flapped its little wings and flew over from the distance. It landed on Lung Ruoxia's shoulder and asked with a frown, "They are my beastie." Lung Ruoxia explained to the golden hawk. "You have a beastie?" The golden hawk was surprised. It had never heard of this. Thanks when Lung Ruoxia heard this, she could not help but feel a dark cloud hang over her forehead. What did she mean by she had a beastie? Couldn't she have a beastie? One had to know that she had quite a number of beasties. Cute master, who is this stupid bird? Baby saw the traces of an unfamiliar beastie and asked curiously. It's a temporary flying beast that I hired when I went to the Green Dragon Mountain. Lung Ruoxia sighed. These little guys wouldn't start a fight over a disagreement, right? She was a little worried. If it's only temporary, why is it still here? You glared at the golden eagle and said when he found the guy who was snatching his bowl of rice. Hello, I don't know the way home, so I had to stay. The golden hawk said with a bitter face. Where's your house? My baby is curious again. This golden eagle doesn't even know the way home. What a weirdo. In a forest. The golden hawk thought for a while and replied. Baby was very depressed when he heard this answer. In the forest? There were plenty of forests in the Hautian continent. Which forest was it? What forest? I'll send you back. You asked the question in his baby's heart, and his face was full of eagerness. Apparently, he wanted to get rid of the golden eagle in front of him as soon as possible. I don't know what kind of forest it is. It doesn't seem to have a name. The golden hawk thought for a while and said honestly. This time, Lian Yu was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. Was the golden eagle playing with it? How could a beastie not remember its own home? Master, where is its home? I'll send it back. Taking a deep breath, you turn to ask Lung Ruoxue. The forest that it lives in really doesn't have a name, and I can't tell the exact address either. It can only recognize it if I send it back personally. Lung Ruoxue replied casually. She had no intention of sending the golden eagle back. However, she could not reveal the current situation. I see. Then when can we send it back? Yu was very disappointed by Lung Ruoxue's words, but he did not give up and continued to ask. After the Hautian continent is over, he said. Lung Ruoxue replied perfunctorily. Oh, hearing this, Yu was a little listless. However, he didn't want to be looked down upon by the golden eagle, so he quickly pulled himself together and decided to use a soft approach. He first brought the golden eagle to his side and tried to avoid contact with his master. In this way, the golden eagle wouldn't be able to take away his job. At least on the Hautian continent, he would still be his master's only flying beast. With that, it was satisfied. After thinking it through, Yu immediately said to the golden eagle, as an eagle, I will protect you in the future, so you have to listen to me, understand? You have to listen to us. Baby said, what's in it for me to listen to you? The golden hawk blinked its eyes and asked innocently. The 5 little beasts choked. Was this guy bargaining with them? Even if there are no benefits, you still have to listen. Yuhua shouted. If there are no benefits, I will not listen to you. I will only listen to this fierce woman. At the very least, she will not let me go hungry. The golden eagle said without hesitation. As it spoke, it looked at Lung Ruoxue. Lung Ruoxue immediately understood that the fierce woman the golden eagle was talking about was her. We won't let you go hungry. You promised. He knew very well that they had to reduce the contact between the golden eagle and its master, so that the golden eagle would not compete with them for favor. That's right, we'll take care of your food in the future. Baby also promised. Chapter 2640. Speculations from the Outside World 1. If you can really feed me well, then I'll listen to you. The golden hawk thought for a while and agreed. It felt that an eagle had to bow its head under the eaves. These 5 beastie looked like they were not to be trifled with, and it was alone, so it thought it was better to be tactful. Anyway, it did not have high requirements. As long as it was not hungry, had food to eat, and had sleep, it would be satisfied. It's settled then. Baby gave the final word. Seeing that the little beasts were chatting happily, and that Lung Ruoxue was evil-hearted enough not to remind Baby and the other beasts, the golden eagle's personality was a little. Let them discover it themselves. After the golden eagle thought that it had been accepted by the 5 strange little beasts, it quickly turned its curious eyes to the father and son, who were a little uneasy not far away. It flew directly to Xiaoshan and asked, Who are you? I've never seen you before. I'm Xiaoshan. Xiaoshan introduced himself. What about her? The golden hawk looked at the mountain. I'm Xiaoshan's father. My name is Deshan. Nice to meet you. The mountain took the initiative to introduce himself after hearing the golden eagle's question. However, the golden hawk immediately widened its eyes and looked at Xiaoshan uneasily. It asked again with a confused face, Your father is a woman? This question not only made the golden eagle feel unprecedented uneasiness, But even Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao, who had been watching the show from the side, were extremely puzzled. The mountain in their eyes, even though his name was very masculine, his body was extremely burly, and his face was not very pretty, was still a woman. Why did he claim to be Xiaoshan's father? Wasn't this a little too strange? They couldn't deny that they were a little frightened. I'm a man. The mountain quickly explained when he saw that the other party had misunderstood. Liar. I'm not so old that I can't tell men from women. The golden hawk complained. Senior, please help me explain. The mountain was so depressed that he was on the verge of tears. Although he was pretending to be a woman to help Senior, there was no need to do so now. Therefore, he really didn't want to let people continue to misunderstand. Hearing this, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but chuckle. She then said seriously, he's indeed a man. He's currently dressed as a woman. Oh, the golden eagle, Lung Xiaoqing, and Lung Xiaoxiao nodded at the same time. They finally understood. Besides, they were very impressed by the mountain. This guy was too good at pretending to be a woman. If he had not confessed, they would have thought that the person in front of them was a woman. The mountain heaved a sigh of relief after the matter was cleared up. However, what made him depressed was that even after knowing the truth, the two humans and the beast would still look at him curiously from time to time. This fact drove him a little crazy. Thanks Mountain, who could no longer bear the strange looks, looked at Lung Ruoxue with tears in his eyes. He sobbed. Senior, please help me restore my male identity. Sob. He couldn't take it anymore. All right then. Lung Ruoxue suppressed her laughter and nodded. Then she brought Big Mountain into a guest room. When the two of them came out of the guest room, the mountain had completely returned to his original gender, and his face was full of smiles. After dressing up as a woman, he finally realized how difficult it was to be a woman. When he was in Luo City, he could not ignore Wen Yuan's affectionate gaze even though he had been pretending to be sick. If he were a real woman, he might have been secretly delighted by Wen Yuan's gaze. However, he was not a real woman. He was a man deep down. When he was faced with such an affectionate gaze, he did not feel any secret delight. Instead, he felt that it was harassment. That's right. That was how he felt. Although those days were only for a few short days, he deeply felt that he did not want to try again. What's more, on the way to Wanshan City, he still had to serve his precious few masters like a horse or a cow. To be honest, he was very happy to take care of these few beast ancestors, but he didn't want to hear something like, "Aren't you a woman? Why can't you even do such a small thing well?" However, this was nothing. After being with those little beasts for a long time, he also knew that they liked to joke and would tease him from time to time. So, although he was teased like this for no reason, he was still very calm. The real restlessness started when they arrived at Wanshan City. That was the source of his nightmare. This wasn't to say that Wanshan City's people didn't treat him well. On the contrary, Wanshan City's people treated him quite well. However, he really couldn't stand those men treating him like a real woman. The moment there was something that everyone thought women should do, such as washing clothes, helping others take care of their children, and so on, if there was a lack of manpower, they would arrange for him to take over. Moreover, as long as he showed even the slightest intention, those people would say to him very earnestly, "As a woman, if you can't even handle such a small family matter, how are you going to get married in the future? Or rather, a woman should do something that a woman should do. How can you compete with us for work like a man all day? Our Wanshan City doesn't lack anything, but what we lack the most is women who can do family affairs. So, you should go and do what you need to do." Every time he heard these words, he would feel conflicted, depressed, and frustrated. He felt even more indignant in his heart. You bastard! Who made the rule that women could only do housework and take care of children? Could it be that women can't do things that men can do? This was clearly a display of male chauvinism. The mountain disapproved of such words and scoffed at them. Several times, he was so angry that he even told the head butler of Wanshan City that he was a man and not the woman they thought he was. However, no one believed his words. Even with his precious little beasts and his own son as a witness, he still couldn't make the chief butler and the others believe this fact. This result made him even more depressed. At the same time, he also clearly understood that the people of Wanshan City really treated him as a woman. They also treated his truth as nonsense, and might even think that he was mentally unstable. This realization made the mountain so depressed that he almost vomited blood. However, from then on he gave up the idea of continuing to correct the chief butler and the others. It was all because they were destined not to believe his words. Now that he had regained his original gender, the mountain suddenly felt elated. Let's see what else those people have to say now. The mountain decided that when he had the time, he would definitely pay the chief butler and the others a visit and make them blind. Just as the mountain was thinking about this, he sharply felt 3 more curious gazes on him. He looked up and saw that it was the same 3 people. After some thought, the mountain looked up at the 2 people and the beast and said, "I'm a man. It really is." The golden hawk said as if it finally believed him. Chapter 2641. Speculations from the outside world, 2. The mountain was depressed again when he heard that. So even when Lung Ruoxue said that she was a man in a woman's outfit, they didn't really believe her. What the hell is this? Big Mountain felt his eyes turn wet. He really wanted to cry. Hee hee. It's too magical. The golden eagle saw that the mountain was not in a good mood, so it smiled awkwardly and flew around him a few more times before it finally stopped looking at him in surprise. The mountain remained silent. He did not know how to respond to the golden eagle. After a long time, when Lung Xiaoqing and Lung Xiaoxiao were done being surprised, the 2 brothers decided to take their leave and leave the remaining time for Lung Ruoxue to catch up with her little beasts. Before he left, Baby did not forget to remind Lung Xiaoxiao, "Remember our compensation." When Lung Xiaoxiao heard this, he staggered and almost fell. He did not expect this little thing to still remember this. He had thought that the little fellow would have forgotten about such a warm gathering of the master beasts. From the looks of it, Lung Yichun would not be able to escape this calamity. Nodding his head, Lung Xiaoxiao indicated that he would not forget. He then pulled his elder brother and left the falling snow garden, as if they were running for their lives. Lung Ruoxue's curiosity was piqued when she saw the 2 Lung clan's elders running away, as if they were being chased by evil spirits, and heard the treasure mention compensation. What compensation? What did you guys do? Lung Ruoxue was still unclear about what had just happened outside the city gates, and did not pay attention to the movements of Baby and the rest. However, based on her understanding of her beast, no matter what the compensation that Baby had mentioned meant, her beast would definitely not suffer a loss. He just didn't know who would be the unlucky one this time. "Cute master, someone is bullying us." Sob. "We're so pitiful. We almost didn't get to see our cute master." When Baby heard Lung Ruoxue's question, it suddenly remembered that it had yet to complain to its master. What a big mistake it was to be a beastie that was good at acting coquettishly. No. It had to work hard to correct its bad habit of forgetting business when it saw its master. "It's that serious?" Hearing her precious words, Lung Ruoxue could do nothing but feel astonished. To be honest, she didn't believe her precious words. In this world, even if someone dared to bully her beastie, the one who would suffer would definitely not be her own child. However, since her precious had already said so, it wouldn't be right if she didn't cooperate. So, after she asked the question in her heart, she revealed a pained expression again. She gently stroked her own beastie's soft and smooth fur, and patiently waited for her baby to complain to her. She also wanted to see who had the guts to bully her child. Humph. She couldn't even bear to touch a single hair of her little friend, let alone others. And Baby's silver eyes were filled with tears as he nodded heavily. He then said, "It's a guy called Lung Yichun who bullied us." Following that, the 5 little beasts explained to their master what Lung Yichun had done at the city gates with added oil and vinegar. After listening to it, Lung Ruoxue's forehead was filled with black lines while Mountain and his son, who were listening by the side, broke out in cold sweat. They swore, "In the future, no matter who I bully, I will never bully these 5 little beasts. They are really too terrifying." Not only did he vividly describe what had happened at the city gate, he even described Lung Yichun as a criminal who had committed a great crime. and wanted to obstruct their master beast from meeting. If Deshan and his son were not involved at the scene, they might have believed the 5 little fellows and blacklisted Lung Yichun as an important enemy. In addition, he had to think of a way to avenge his beastie. But now they did not have such thoughts at all. Instead, they felt deep sympathy for that unlucky fellow named Lung Yichun. Of all people to provoke, he had to provoke these 5 black-hearted guys. Sigh. He was really too pitiful. Thanks, however, as much as they pitied Lung Yichun, they were also curious as to what Lung Ruoxue would do to that unlucky fellow when she heard what the few little beasts said. What made them even more confused was the strange expression on Lung Ruoxue's beautiful face. Rage. It didn't look like it. But it didn't make sense for him to not be angry. Based on their understanding of Lung Ruoxue, they knew very well how protective this master was of their beastie. Now that he heard that his beastie was being bullied, why did he have such an expression? The father and son were very confused. They truly felt that they could not guess the thoughts of the strong. In reality, the reason why Lung Ruoxue acted this way was because she felt that the Lung Yichun she knew was not the same person as the one her beasties were talking about. Even though she did not have much contact with Lung Yichun, and he was a little self-righteous, he was definitely not the kind of person that her precious and the rest were talking about, a tyrant-level character. Based on Lung Yichun's intelligence and courage, he was just a tyrant. If they wanted him to show off his power in front of outsiders, they might as well wait for the iron tree to bloom. After some thought, Lung Ruoxue could not help but ask, "Is the Lung Yichun you're talking about from the Lung family?" "Of course it is." Baby laughed evilly. "But the Lung clan shouldn't have anyone with the same name. Why is the Lung Yichun that you guys are talking about different from the one I know?" Lung Ruoxue asked in bewilderment. "Ehe. Cute master. People are multifaceted. What you've seen should only be one side of him, while what we've seen is the other side. In short, he looks down on us beasts. We should really throw him to the Beast Clan. In the Beast Clan, he will definitely be a different species. At that time, let's see if he still dares to not treat us as humans," Baby said with a face full of anger. When he got to the point of excitement, he even clenched his claws into small fists. Upon hearing this, Lung Ruoxue and Big Mountain broke out in cold sweat. They really wanted to say, "You weren't humans to begin with." However, it seemed that it was better not to say this, or it would affect everyone's relationship. Lung Ruoxue caressed the obviously agitated baby in a comforting manner and said, "That's a good idea. I support you." "Yes, we support you too." The mountain father and son quickly replied in unison. "And me," the mother parasol tree, who had been pretending to be invisible, also said. "I also support it. We must let those humans who disrespected us receive the most severe punishment." The golden eagle said. "Then it's a deal. By the way, cute master, how much should we charge Lung Yichun for his mental damage?" Baby thought for a while and asked. "You guys can do as you see fit. I'll bear the consequences for you. Do whatever you want." Lung Ruoxue said calmly. Baby nodded in satisfaction when he heard this. The mountain father and son were moved to tears. "What a good master." Sob. When they heard Lung Ruoxue's words, they had the urge to recognize her as their master. The mountain father and son sighed with emotion. At that moment, several excited voices rang in their ears. "Master, we finally meet again." The representatives of Wanshan City, led by the chief steward, appeared in the garden of the falling snow garden. These tall and strong men had tears in their eyes, and they were so excited that their bodies were trembling. Chapter 2642. Speculations from the Outside World 3. The head butler of Wanshan City knelt down in front of Lung Ruoxue and started bawling. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue was a little speechless. However, she did not stop him. Instead, she allowed him to cry without caring about his image. The head butler cried until he was covered in snot and tears. When he had cried enough, he suddenly realized that he seemed to have embarrassed himself. He was a man, but he was crying like a woman. Master wouldn't despise him, right? At the thought of this, he felt so wrong that he wanted to cry again. "Master, The head butler's eyes were filled with tears as he called out shyly like a little wife. Lung Ruoxua looked at his expression and felt even more embarrassed. However, she couldn't let her subordinate down, so she could only smile awkwardly and say, "We meet again, head butler. Master, we've missed you so much." Only then did the head butler remember the Wanshan City representative who had followed him here to meet his master, and he said with some embarrassment, "I also miss you guys very much. This time, I've come back to bring you guys to the divine realm. In the future, everyone in the Wanshan City will develop in the divine realm." Lung Ruoxua laughed. "Yes, we will all listen to Master. However, if we leave, what will happen to Wanshan City? We've been developing there for so long, and there are already rules there. It's a pity to give up just like that." The head butler said with some reluctance. He had the deepest feelings for Wanshan City, and Wanshan City represented all his hard work. Therefore, it was really difficult for him to part with it when he left this time. Of course, no matter how important Wanshan City was to him, it was not as important as his master. Back then, if it wasn't for the fact that he was arranged to stay behind to protect his master's career, he would probably have gone to the divine realm with Commander Yi and the others at that time. And now, although it was a few years later than that time, he was still quite happy to be able to leave with his master. Sell Wanshan City. We won't be coming back to the Haotian continent in the future, and there's no use for us to keep the Wanshan City. Lung Ruoxua replied honestly. That's good. The head butler nodded his head. He was indeed reluctant to let Wanshan City go to waste. If he could find a good master for Wanshan City, he would be able to leave with a peace of mind. However, he had to carefully choose the candidate for the future master of Wanshan City, so as not to destroy Wanshan City. I've picked out a few buyers from the top forces. When you're free, you can get in touch with them and see who's more suitable to be the new master of Wanshan City. Then you can sell Wanshan City to him. Lung Ruoxua explained in an understanding manner, as she could tell the head butler's thoughts and his reluctance to part with Wanshan City. Yes, yes. The head butler was happy to hear that. Then he asked about what had happened back then. Lung Ruoxua saw that other than the head butler, the others were also curious and wanted to know, so she briefly explained it to them. When they heard how Lung Ruoxua had managed to escape, they all broke out in cold sweat for him, and sympathized with the Wen family. At the mention of the Wen family, the head butler quickly added, "Master, many people from the Wen family have come up from the Haotian continent. I think they were brought back by Sun Tao from the divine realm. Yes, the Wen family in the divinity no longer exists. The Wen family on the Haotian continent should be their only hope of survival. However, the messenger of the Wen family is a disaster. What happened to the Wen family back then had a lot to do with me, so they can't be kept." Lung Ruoxua said honestly. Thanks, she had never thought of herself as a good person. Hence, she would never let go of the Wen family just because she was too soft-hearted and let them off. Most importantly, she did not want to bring herself more trouble in the future. After all, she had only interacted with Wen Yuan for a short while, and she knew that the Wen family was ambitious. Besides, Sun Tao was also around. She could not let the Wen family off. "Master, what do you need us to do?" The head butler nodded in agreement and asked, "Let's observe the changes first. Also, I'm sure you've found out how many members of the Wen family are with Sun Tao and where they are?" Lung Ruoxua asked. This time, she had sent her precious little beasts to the Wanshan City. This was one of the missions she had assigned them. "Yes, we've been keeping track of the Wen family's situation ever since the incident in Luo City," the head butler said proudly, but in the next second, his face immediately fell and he said in frustration, "Master, we couldn't help with the matter in Luo City." This was also one of the chief butler's greatest regrets in his life. He had always blamed himself. After all, they were all his master's subordinates. They had failed in their duties when they only found out about the other party's accident after the incident. You can't be blamed for this. After all, the Luo family is still in the light and they've been developing too quickly. It's only natural for them to become a living target for the other party. Besides, no one expected Sun Tao to lead the Wen family back. Back then, I thought that he had fallen along with the Wen family. If I didn't return to the Haotian continent this time, I wouldn't have thought that he was still alive. Lung Ruoxue consoled. Truly a disaster that lives on for 1,000 years. The head butler was not fond of Sun Tao, and was rather disgusted. Just the fact that he had kidnapped his master with his master back, then was enough to make him hate Sun Tao to the bone. Don't worry, he won't have a good ending. Lung Ruoxue smiled as she promised. Yes, with master around, Sun Tao will definitely not be able to escape this time. The head butler said with a smile. Lung Ruoxue didn't expect the head butler to learn how to suck up to her. She smiled and nodded. After exchanging pleasantries for a while, everyone busied themselves with preparing food and wine, preparing to celebrate. After preparing food and wine, it was late at night. The chief butler and the others left Luo Shuiyuan reluctantly. Of course, they were all carried away by the Lung family's attendants. After they left, the mother parasol tree, who had also drunk quite a bit, looked at Lung Ruoxue with a smile and said, "Shui, your subordinates can drink a lot, but they can't drink as much as I can. Look. They were all taken down by me. Hey, don't move, I'm talking to you." Hearing the mother parasol tree's drunkenness, Lung Ruoxue laughed and said helplessly, "Senior, I didn't move. You're drunk." After saying that, she couldn't help but hold her forehead. In her entire life, this was the first time she had seen a drunk tree. It seemed that no matter how high the cultivation of the tree in front of her was, when it was drunk, it was no different from ordinary people. However, the drunk mother parasol tree would never admit that it had drunk too much. Instead, it looked at Lung Ruoxue unhappily and said, "Little girl, I'm not drunk. You're the one who's moving. You can't fool me." All right. Lung Ruoxue gave up on arguing with someone who was so drunk that she could not differentiate between north and south. She supported the mother parasol tree back to her room, and helped her lie down before she left, and went to the garden again. When they reached the garden, Lung Ruoxue was even more speechless. His beastie was so drunk that it was lying on the ground. The mountain father and son were each hugging a small stone bench, drooling as they slept. After picking up all her little beastie, she looked at Big Mountain and his son again. Finally, she called for 2 servants to send them back to their room. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.